The May 14th meeting of the Durham Planning Board shall come to order. We'll start with a roll call.
Eric Lund, Town Council Alternate.
Peyton McManus.
Sally Tobias.
Paul Rasmussen.
Robert Sullivan, Gary Whittington.
Munish Nanda.
Do we have any members on Zoom?
No.
No. Okay. She was here, she's gone. In that case,
Excuse me, Paul.
yes?
Someone with iPad 3 just joined, so let's find out who it is.
All right.
My traffic engineer.
It sounds more like your traffic engineer than my missing member.
Scott Gordon from DAI would be.
All right. Eric,
I guess I'm
You'll
Town
get big
Council
council
guy for
rep.
today.
and Munish, welcome to your first meeting. You are now sitting in Richard Kelly's seat,
Good thing we got some.
who will not be here tonight. So that does keep us at 7, so we have a full board. Tonight's promising to be a long night, so I do want to mention, especially for the members here at the table, our next meeting is a workshop, and where we will be generally, the plan for this workshop was to reserve it for zoning issues. So if we have some of the amendments tonight that are in front of us, we could have the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then postpone our deliberation until the workshop, if that allows us to get out at a reasonable hour, if it's looking like we're going to be challenged with that respect. I would definitely be looking at doing that for the PUD and possibly item 9 as well. It might deserve some extra attention that we wouldn't be able to give it justice to tonight. So.
Do we want to move the PUD to the last thing on the agenda?
No, I still want to hold the public hearing where it is. And that way, for the conceptual, we have whatever time we want.
All right. In that case, I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We won't have a town planners report tonight. I am tasked with taking, can't take minutes without a pen. Taking notes for Mr. Barrett as necessary. Reports from board members to serve on other committees.
Do you want to report on housing? Since you-
Housing, yeah.
Feel free to go see.
So housing is put together, is getting close to a final draft of another set of amendments for reviewing the table of uses and, excuse me?
Dimensions?
And the dimensions. And they will probably at their June meeting decide they've played with that enough and send that to us for review. And I'll figure out where it belongs in terms of our schedule. I have a couple of other things that I may want to slip in front of it. And in addition, this is part of, at the last, I'll let Eric take care of that, and I'll fill in if it's in. And that was Housing Task Force. IMAC had a meeting, and it was discussion around, again, more plans, nothing directly affecting us at this point in time. With any other committees?
Okay, Town Council, at the May 5th Town Council meeting, Munish was made officially an alternate on the board. And the other 2 items of interest to the planning board are we adopted the amendment on the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, and we had first reading on the amendment to split the central business district into what is currently called CBD 1 and CBD 2. There's been some suggestion of possibly putting more descriptive name on CBD 2.
All right, very good, thank you.
Do you have a, that was first read, is there?
So your public hearing for that will be at the May 19th meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right, no more things. Public comments. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a public comment? I will also at this time, if you have comments regarding 35 Madbury Road, accept them now.
Okay, this is Bethel Shansky, Packers Falls Road. This is not on the agenda, but something I hope you'll consider and maybe at your next workshop. I think having split CD1 and CD2 is a great opportunity for the community to really think about how they're going to be different. I do want to point out that all during the Colonial Durham 8 years of public hearings, it was clear that the community was looking for a more of a transitional zone at the plaza that would be different from what was downtown. In the interim, we changed the housing, the per square foot density of occupants downtown from 300 to 200, which is now for CD1 and CD2. So just to keep in mind, just before Colonial Durham brought their proposal forward, we were planning to change the whole downtown to 600 square feet per unit to try to get more nicer quality units that would allow for a different kind of housing. We had that date clash with the Colonial Durham proposal, the lawsuit, and all that, so we were forced to keep that at 300 square feet per occupant. Now the whole area is 200. So as we think about transitional zone, I just want to point out that the plaza has now 50% more density than it had when Colonial Durham was proposing their student housing project at the plaza. So that's one thing to consider. What kind of density do we want to see there? And then there was also discussion about heights. I hope that it doesn't turn out that the transitional zone at the plaza is transitional because we're just going to build up everything more on Main Street and thus the plaza will be less. Not that I live in the faculty neighborhood, but I feel like there are a lot of residents there who would like to see it actually a transition to the residential area, and that's something I hope the planning board will consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in Zoom? No hands in Zoom? All right.
Nope.
We have a set of old minutes to review for November 20th. Oh,
Public comments?
okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Matt Kamachak, Thompson Lane. Thank you for your work on this board. I just wanted to do partly almost like a public service announcement to people in Durham. I hope they're watching from home. I feel as though Durham residents are not sufficiently informed about the slew of zoning changes that are taking place. And most of those have been discussed here, amply, but I feel as though people are, might be taken aback by the nature and severity of some of the changes that are being proposed here. And so I hope people will start paying attention and engaging in this process. The changes that I'm referring to include a recent preemptive residential zoning change prompted by events at the legislature in Concord. That has already taken place, as I understand it. Proposed rezoning of the central business district, Church Hill, or a rezoning of Church Hill, a rezoning of the courthouse district. There are initiatives, some of which require zoning changes that are in the area of workforce housing, student housing, and senior housing. There's, as you mentioned a few moments ago, there's a planned unit development, PUD, proposal for an ordinance to facilitate a 60-acre project at UNH. I understand that the town won't have a lot of control over that, but it will still have a significant impact on the town. So it's important, the drafting of that ordinance is quite important. The proposed changes that I just mentioned have one thing in common, and that's that they're not being initiated by residents. They're coming from small groups within these boards and from the town administration. And so, and that's perfectly fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I feel as though if you're going to try to impose significant changes on the town through zoning, that it is incumbent upon you to explain, your strategy, your rationale, to substantiate what you are proposing with data, with facts, right, with research. And that is where I feel as though you could do a better job. And I don't know if it's really, I tend to think that it's the job of either the town administrator or the town planner to sort of provide the big picture to residents and say, look, we're engaged in all of these and probably more initiatives, and we're doing this for these reasons, and these interrelate in this way, and these complement each other or are coordinated in the following fashion. And that seems like a very tall task, right? To be honest, if you look at these changes, it seems like it would be very challenging to say, hey, we're doing this, like this is a really integrated set of proposals. So if you can't explain how they're integrated or why these are all a good idea in concert, then I think there's a problem. And so I would just say to exercise caution, and I would favor a more incremental, more prudent approach rather than, this is almost Trumpian in its level of activity. So hopefully, going forward, we can have some more, a lot of these initiatives, I think it's not enough to say, the downtown needs revitalization. We're going to allow building willy-nilly in the downtown in hopes of, people are going to populate the downtown and that's going to revitalize the business. I don't think that's quite enough. And the same thing is with, with work. I don't think it's, it started out as workforce housing, now it's attainable housing or something like that. Why is that change made? Well, I think it's because we couldn't really guarantee that the units were going to be occupied by workforce. And so, no, I have the mic now. You can respond afterwards. You can respond afterwards.
Respond to that.
No, you can respond afterwards.
Okay,
right?
go ahead.
You'll have ample opportunity. So I think that, if your objective is to provide housing for workforce, I think you should really stick to that and not dilute it so that we have something that is, doesn't meet the objective of the town. And I'll just wrap up and allow you to respond. But I just hope that there will be more sort of data and more substantiation, more findings, more analyses that support these proposals, that will be provided to the residents, and more clarity about these proposals. I know it's very challenging, and I think because it's challenging, we need to proceed with caution. Thank you.
So I just wanted to clarify the purpose for not using the term workforce housing, and it has to do with the state's definition of workforce housing, which basically says, oh, here it is. Do you recall? Oh, yeah, there it is. It's in this paragraph.
Yeah.
So it'd be a workforce housing by the state only allows two housing types. The first one is a house for a four-person household. And the other one is done at 100% of median income. And the other one is a three-person household for a 60% of median income. And that basically would mean you'd only have two types of units that the state would recognize if we use the term workforce. And whereas affordable also has another definition where it has to do with a person's income. And we chose attainable sort of a term that avoids legal connections and connotations that would potentially get us into trouble.
And if I might also add, I was a bit taken aback by your comment that these boards are not being, these decisions are not being made by community members. I am a resident of Durham, and everyone that serves on all of our boards are residents of Durham, and we're representatives of our communities. Those board openings are available for anyone that is interested to apply for that. And also, all of the, are you going to let him talk again? All of the information and discussion and documentation is on the website. This is an ongoing discussion that's been going on for quite some time. There is a lot of documentation there. PowerPoint presentations that are available that explain many of the amendments and decisions that were, how they work and why they work. Very well played out, easy to follow, and it's just a matter of going online and finding those information. We're not doing anything behind closed doors. All of our meetings are broadcast, DCAT, and anyone, community, or even outside the community, is welcome to come to those meetings and be present in the room and provide their own comments during public comments of all those meetings. So just to be clear, they are all done by community members.
Yeah, and that's why I said in my comments that it was a small number of residents, and exactly.
With
a
planning
small.
board, you can't have everybody in town.
That's correct. And when you bring up since you bring up the online resources, I spent a pretty good amount of time over the last week looking at the Housing Task Force documentation. Okay, the Housing Task Force, for people who don't know, has been working on that issue for 3+ years. And if you go to the website, and I encourage anybody to go there who has an interest, you will find that the Housing Task Force has not published any findings. Okay, so there have been 3 years, but they haven't come to any conclusions or any findings. You will also find that the Housing Task Force has not engaged in any analyses in the past 3 years. They did hire a company.
Enough.
No.
Enough. No, you're being, at this point, you
it's a
get to
fact.
speak at
It's a
my
fact.
mercy here.
She just
You've had your
encouraged-
5 minutes.
Sir, she
and
just
if you-
encouraged me.
No, I
she
did not
She just
encourage
No,
encouraged
you
me
are
to
now
take
spouting
away.
nonsense,
I
is
am
what
not.
you are doing. Really?
I'm not. The truth
Oh,
evidently
the
hurts.
housing study, the housing task force didn't do anything? That housing task, the
You
housing study
commissioned
that was
a
put out
study
was
by
done
a
at their,
by a consultant.
by consultants
Correct.
guided, that's part of their findings. Whether you
That's not-
accept that or not, that is the truth. You may now sit
I
down.
said the housing task force did not do any.
Professionals to do that.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Well,
Anyways,
You're done.
Anyway.
You're done.
let
You're
me
done.
just tell you what one of the findings was.
You are done!
One of the findings was Durham is part of a larger.
I cut his microphone.
Durham is part of a larger community.
Sit down.
That was a thing. So if that's the quality of your findings, something's wrong.
Marjorie?
Anne Marie Harris, 56 Oyster River Road. I live in the faculty neighborhood, which is adjacent to some of the significant changes that are being proposed. I understand that there have been studies done by the task force, but I would like to call to your attention, having participated in zoning changes as a planning board member for 6 years, in the past, significant zoning changes, the public has been invited to participate in a charrette, where it's not just a small group, but the small group, the Housing Task Force, appropriately would announce to the community that we would get together. I think we did it up at the university in one of the big halls, and talk about all of this, because I think these are incredibly significant changes that are being proposed. And I appreciate the work that's been done by the Housing Task Force. However, on the record, mention once again, as I did before this meeting, that the last 2 Friday updates had many announcements of many other significant meetings and nothing about this public hearing. And I've checked it twice. It was never mentioned. And not everybody gets Foster's, not everybody walks into the town hall to see what the bulletin boards say. So I don't think the public was appropriately made informed of this meeting, and I would hope that after your discussion this evening, that you would hold the meeting open until there could be some further public input. Thank you.
Does that apply to, which public hearing are we referencing here? Just the zoning?
Regarding zoning, regarding zoning changes, that there be some further Are you asking about Friday?
We're having 4 public hearings
We have 3
tonight.
amendments tonight, so which ones were you talking about?
are you talking about the downtown amendments, like the zoning amendments for
The zoning
multifamily?
amendments, yes, but
Because
there was
there's-
no public notice that the agenda tonight would include zoning amendment discussion. It was not mentioned at all in Friday updates, either this last week or the previous week, May 2nd.
Well,
So we're really talking, I think, Marjorie, you're saying you don't think it's being widely disseminated? Like it's been legally noticed and all that
Oh, I
kind
know
of
that it's
stuff?
been legally noticed. I don't happen to get Foster's anymore, and I haven't recently been in the town hall to look at the bulletin board. And unless it's mentioned in Friday updates, as it has mentioned many other seemingly less significant meetings that are being proposed in this past period of time.
Okay.
I would suggest then that, that you're telling us that this board needs to improve communications with Todd Selleck so that, so that the public hearings like this get notice. And I'm aware of other instances where it seems that there's been miscommunication between him and the planning board, which I'll get into at the appropriate public hearing.
that would be Michael Barron's job to communicate to
Right.
Todd. Yeah.
There's communication that should be happening that appears not to be happening. I
And
will
histo-
concede
yeah, I
that.
would really appreciate it. And historically, there are precedents that I'm trying to call
Yeah,
to your
I get it,
attention.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one comment on that, because I hear you, I think we're both overloaded with too much information, and then the information that you might want is sometimes difficult to find and depends on which channel you're receiving it. So I would say probably the most efficient way, the town website does have a calendar link on the website where it'll show all of the meetings for that month.
I looked it up.
And so that I think, at least even right now, that's what I'm on.
There's not an easy click, here's the agenda and the
Well,
discussion.
if I could,
There's a couple of steps.
So that
I think
calendar
the
area is probably the
takeaway-
easiest, and that's what I would recommend.
I don't think we're going to solve it tonight. I think the
Yeah.
takeaway is we can look at that and find ways to
Well, I would recommend a
disseminate it more.
charrette, because that gets a whole bunch of people involved, and that would work much better.
Oh, we
Thank
did the
you.
charrette for the master plan.
Wasn't the-
And zoning changes.
Any more public comments? All right. Item 8.
Or there was
one
the
more.
review,
One
there
more.
was the review of,
One more public comment.
right, and then there was also the review of old minutes before we got to the
Right.
public hearing.
Review of
Yeah.
old minutes.
I'll keep this short. Larry Harris, 56 Oyster River Road. I have been a faculty member at UNH, or was, for 51 years, from 69 to 2020. I've also spent a lot of time interacting with other institutions and such. And over time, what I've really watched happen is the town has increasingly developed into a student ghetto. It's on its way. All you have to do is drive around in the downtown and see all of the housing. Now you're going to 200 square feet rather than 300 square feet. And the zoning proposals that are up tonight will seal the deal. And the whole idea, I thought, was to make the downtown a more attractive place for residents rather than students. And these proposals are all designed to go in just the opposite direction. Sorry, and also, as all of these proposals are for building more student housing, in expanding the student housing into new zones, the enrollments are going down, not up. You're already beyond capacity in this town. The university's now requiring 2 years of residency rather than 1 year because they're desperate to maintain those housing their dorms and food services and stuff going. So you're on your way to turn us into a student ghetto. And if you don't know what a student ghetto is, I see the Chula Vista, which is next to UC Santa Barbara. And it is, the university's here, and there is a community just over a ways, and it is nothing but student housing and what you're proposing for Durham to become. Thank you.
Afraid to say anything
Anything more?
Give it a minute.
All right. So our
Oh,
old,
no, see what, sorry. So I said, give it another minute. So this is our,
Robin Mower, I was going to say Faculty Road, but no longer, Britton Lane. I don't think it's a bad idea, the planning board to ask the planner to write what might be, say, a 4 or 5 page community note to the town to pull together some of all the information that Matt Kamonchuk was talking about. I, in the past, have followed a lot of what's gone on in town. I went to Economic Development Committee meetings, I went to Planning Board meetings, I went to Conservation Commission meetings. I knew a lot of what was going on. It takes a huge amount of time, and many people don't have that time. I'm told over and over that one of the reasons that we don't have more volunteers to fill some of the empty chairs is because people have commitments to work and to family, maybe taking care of other people. And I don't think it would be a terrible idea to ask the planner to do that. Obviously, it might take a little while, you might not be thrilled, but who else would be in that position of knowing all those different things? I just hope that you will consider that. Thank you.
Okay. We have the old minutes from November 2024. There was a typo I submitted to Karen. Did anybody have other stuff that hasn't been submitted to Karen yet?
I reviewed and I'm fine.
I'm good with it.
I move we accept the minutes of November 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Very good. So 601, one abstention by Councilor Lund. And now we're up to item 8. Public hearing for 3 Dover Road, a new Dunkin' Donuts. Site plan application for a new 1,500 square foot Dunkin' Donuts restaurant on quarter-acre lot located next to the Holiday Inn Express. JESP Enterprises property owner, Jim Mitchell and Scott Mitchell of Tropic Star Development LLC applicant, Matt Perry, civil engineer, the engineering corp, Scott Thornton, traffic engineer, Vanessa and Associates. This is in the courthouse zone, map 108, lot 38.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
And if you'll reintroduce yourselves.
Certainly. I'm Jim Mitchell from Tropic Star Development, and alongside me tonight is Matt Perry from TEC, the engineering company, who is our civil engineer. As Matt, oh, that's amazing. That was quick. I'll just hand it over now.
Yeah, so it's been about 2 months, I think, since we were last in front of you guys. Since then, there have been some advancements with the project and the site plan. I actually printed out some site plans if you guys want to
Oh, yeah, great.
take one past one. Yeah.
Thank you.
These are new updated versions?
Is this what's up there?
That's what's on the screen, yeah. This is just like a draft that's in the works. There's no stamp on it or anything yet. Since we last met with you, there have been some conversations with New Hampshire DOT that has prompted us to make some slight tweaks to the site plan. And I'll provide a quick update of the project just to remind you guys of what we're doing. So we're proposing to completely redevelop the parcel over at 3 Dover Road. We're taking the Dunkin' Donuts that's in the gas station across the street, moving them over onto this site. We are proposing, lots of improvements to this site, which is, increased parking capacity that's in compliance with the site plan regs, landscaping improvements, all utilities on site that are stubbed right now are able to be reused. And then, additionally, I guess I'll walk through the changes of the site plan since you got. We received a draft decision from the town planner, and he had some comments that we provide some adjustments to the site plan. Ornamental tree in front of the building, which is what you see on the southern corner of the lot there. Recommended. I have the list here actually. An additional shrub at the front easterly corner of the site. So, really minor additions to the site plan. And yeah, I think I'm gonna hand it over to Jim now. He's gonna run through what our discussions with DOT was, and then the resulting changes that we did to the site plan based on those discussions.
Yes, thanks. In an effort to keep it as short and sweet as possible, we're happy to go through any particular plan that you'd like to this evening, but in an effort of time, we're trying to keep it as short as possible. That said, I've been in discussions with Roger Appleton. The board is aware that we met him about 2 months ago out at the site. Since that time, he's been there numerous times on his own. and we've been exchanging emails back and forth as to how, I guess I'll say ideas as to the way in which the site would perform the best. And in doing so, he had written me this email, which I'm going to share with physically hand it to the board after. But basically, he says, the comments below provide the access configurations. I'm willing to permit and also document remaining safety concerns that need to be addressed. I am willing to permit the main site driveway as right in, right out with a left out drive. With a left out driveway. He asked that our engineer work to come up with an alternative, small traversable island for, this is the island that is out on Dover Road between the in and the out of our site, and it needs to be mountable, meaning that the tractor trailer truck for the delivery one time a week would be able to navigate over it without hitting like a giant. So we've been actively working on that. The other thing that we've kept in mind, if you will, is the, and there was a woman's time, forgive me, I don't recollect the name of the neighborhood, but just beyond the Gibbs gas station, talking about the sidewalk and how safety needed to be maintained. Obviously, today we have 2 curb cuts there. They're broad, they're wide open, they're not defined. We're only going down to the 1 curb cut on Dover Road. And so that sidewalk area has been modified slightly to not only accommodate the traversable island, I guess I'll call it. That's probably the right term, right? But also maintain a free and clear sidewalk along the front, a demarcated sidewalk, so that people know where to look for the cars, people know where to look for the pedestrians. Additionally, Roger goes on to say that as such, I will not approve any design that allow actively or passively left in, left out movements to the Duncan's access easement area. So he's referring to the easement that we have with the hotel property. Immediately, it's kind of hard to see on the plan, but immediately adjacent to the left side of the plan, from where I'm sitting anyways. And we are putting in a do not enter sign there, so, or at least that's the proposal. We're working currently with the abutter that has ownership of that. We only have the easement. So we're looking to put a do not enter sign there, and then on their stop sign out of the site, there'll be a no left-hand turn sign there as well. So those are the items that are addressing Roger's letter. And we've illustrated that on this plan with the appropriate markings. Up at the top left, the legend is depicting, what signs go where. So I believe Scott Thornton is on the phone. I've probably stolen all of his thunder regarding traffic, but I wanted to make sure he was here to address any of the board's comments or questions. Oh, there you are.
Jim, can I add one thing?
Oh, yeah,
that you
sure,
missed?
please.
So
Yes, please.
Another one of Roger's concerns
Oh,
was the site entrance, those two, I guess the first 2 parking spaces that
Correct.
are on your right coming to the site. He was concerned that, if somebody's maneuvering in or out of those parking spaces, they're going to block the site entrance. So we decided to designate those as employee-only parking. So during these busy times, those spots will be occupied by employees, and that scenario won't arise. So that was the solution to that concern.
Exactly right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Roger had brought up to our attention not only the first parking stall that we were talking about with Michael when we were before the board last, making kind of a similar suggestion, and I had said at the time we'd make that an employee-only spot, but Roger had said, I'm also worried about the second one creating that. So if you can imagine 2 cars waiting to exit the site, 1 car trying to come in and someone trying to come out of the parking spot, he wanted to make sure there's ample room. So when we had said we'll make them employee spots, they're going to be there for an 8-hour shift. So they're not going to have that same turnover of, minutes or whatnot. So we've concerned everything to address Roger Appleton's comments. Ultimately, they're the ones that give the permit on the roadway. Without a driveway permit, we're not opening. So tonight, we're looking for a conditional approval. whereas I'm sure you'd love to continue to see our smiling faces, but we've been here for a number of months, I believe, since the fall. And I think that we've hit all of the major concerns, but again, we're happy to go over anything and touch on anything that I may have screwed up or missed.
Yeah, I think you did fine, Jim. I think you summarized the issues and your discussions with New Hampshire DOT, so I have nothing really to add at this point.
So if I may, in summary,
Please.
DOT was unwavering in their initial projection, and you are meeting their requests?
I am meeting their requests. Ultimately, the item that I guess remains to be solved is two. The first is the easement. I need to get legal permission, I guess is the right way of saying it, to put a do not enter sign. Even though it's on our property, it's restricting the driveway to prohibit the left-hand turn in from Dover Road into the easement area, that sign for no left-hand turn out. So I need to get that resolved, which I'm in process of, and that would satisfy DOT. And then secondarily is that traversable median. That's the only item, and that's not a, they're not going to accept it or are going to accept it. That's us coming up with what they want and massaging the plan appropriately for the pedestrians having proper ADA access and, I guess, designing the driveway in which they want to see. So I actually have one. I don't know what Matt sent out. Mine printed in color, but you can see on the one I have, there's a small red overlay of what is the most easterly side of the driveway. And so rather than have that driveway flare like this, it's pulling in just a little bit more. And that's really just designed for the right-in turning movement.
The 10-foot radius?
Correct, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't send the one with the red over.
I'm happy to
showing
give
changes,
mine to the
but-
board. I
No,
mean,
it's-
the
No,
email here.
Yeah,
I
we can
I can see it.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
the
can see it
the
right
change to that thing jumped right out at me, and you see I
Okay.
I circled it.
Certainly,
right
yeah,
away.
sure, we're picking up everything.
All right, so that's there, that's there. Okay.
One question. When you put a sign that says, you know, handicapped, and then you have the van, can somebody pull in there who's not in a van with the right handicap placard, or what's the rule around the van?
That is a Scott Thornton question. Did you hear that, Scott?
He's working
I
with.
did. I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah. So if someone has a placard, then they're able to use the handicap space just as easily as a van could. I think that and I think the site had the spaces. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the spaces had to be, one of the spaces had to be van accessible. But if that, whether a vehicle has the handicap spaces or handicap plates or just the placard hanging up, they can still use that, the handicap space.
Or no van, doesn't matter so long as they have the appropriate handicap
Yeah.
tag.
It's the tag.
Yeah,
Yep.
the
My
tag.
husband has one, and he can park in any handicap.
Gotcha.
Doesn't matter. It's just that it says van accessible. If you do have a van, knowing that it will be a little bit easier access for that van. to
Were you
get
testing me?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, though.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, we also have a public hearing, so we'll be doing it, so.
So in peak hours, so looking at the parking configuration, you have 2 of those slots for employee parking and 2 for handicap. That would leave you with 11. In peak hours, or in sort of your peak load, how much do you anticipate that those 11 slots would be full, and then you'd have like almost a queuing situation outside of those slots? And then where would they go if, assuming those 11 slots are full?
Yeah, I mean, it's a convenience thing, and I think that this is kind of the age-old adage that we've been discussing the whole entire time, of which is, if this becomes, let's say, I hate to use the word bottleneck, but if it becomes that the turnover is not quick, which is the whole purpose of, if you remember on our, and I can show it too if you'd like, is the rendering that we have, the elevations of the building is a pickup window. So a lot of people, and again, it's not, I should say this formally, it is not a drive-through, it is a pickup window. So if you can imagine, you're leaving school, you're leaving your home to go to work, whatever it be, you can place your order, you pull in, you grab your coffee, you get back in your car, you leave, or whatever you order. It could be, you know, a bagel or whatever. So the whole idea is efficiency, and we anticipate that we have ample parking. Today, the existing Dunkin' Donuts shares those 21 parking spots that, I believe it's 21, that we have with Irving. And, you know, it's a 3,500 square foot convenience store with the Dunkin' Donuts. So in my mind, we're in parking spots that we don't have today, presently. It's not like I envision all of a sudden Irving's going to take all the same amount of people that were going on site you have across the street. I'm sure they'd love that scenario, but I don't think it's, you know, one for one. And then I guess just to touch on it for some of the members that are new, at least from the very beginning, our ultimate goal is not to lose Dunkin' Donuts that we've had for a tenant for 20 years. It's moving them across the street. So at some point we'll come back and revisit the site where we will be repaving the gas station and beautifying it, making it much more in line with what we've done in Newfields, which is one of our developments. So the goal is to ultimately rehab that and not lose Dunkin' Donuts. We've been staring at the Cumberland Farms blight I've been doing this for 15 years now, and it predates me. So again, I'm happy to jump in on anything, but that's how I envision, 11 spots is ample for it, given the fact that you have the mobile app. A lot of students we're finding will place like an order for a friend and one car comes and grabs them. Plus you have, the Uber Eats, the DoorDashes, those kinds of things.
And then I hear you on that. The challenge is sometimes when I pull into that Irving, you've got cars that are basically using the gas pumps as parking.
Absolutely.
And in a lot of cases, they're not even at the gas pump. They're in,
Totally
and there might
agree.
be 4 of them or more sort of distributed around as sort of an overflow.
Sure.
And then they're already using up the spaces. So I'm just
Absolutely.
I guess when I look at that, I'm just wondering how, if you anticipate at all, if you're going to hit the max of 11, how long you might hit that, and then I just want to make sure there's no one going to be backing up into now what's a primary road into the university.
Absolutely. No, I understand that, and I'm with you. I think that, I live not far from here, and it's we're a seasonal area, let's be honest, and we're talking about UNH. They're closed during the summertime. So the time in which we see probably the most road vehicle traffic is a time where the school's closed. So I think commuter-wise, that's a steady flow that, for now, right? I imagine the kids are out now, May, until August, which is...
Commencement is Saturday.
I was college touring with my daughter last weekend, so I was assuming UNH is all the same.
Okay. Can I just ask one more, and then I know we're getting to, and then just as a point of reference, how many other buildings does your company have you developed that would be similar to this in scale and design and on say a busy road? Just
every project that we own, with the exception of maybe 5, we have about 35 properties that we own today. We've done some development and sold those properties just for one reason or another in the past. We consider on Main and Main. In this instance, this is 100% same kind of site. And what we're saddled with as developers is time and time again, we're struggling for land, we're struggling for the number of parking spaces, about the lowest traffic generation use that I could see fitting on this site. I think that the design has really come together well. When you look at what's available for space, the layout of the road and so on. We've looked at other uses here in the past. I don't know if you remember, my father got into it a little bit. We've looked at quick oil changes in the past. We actually had an approval for variances to, at one point in time, move the garage across the street when we were trying to put Rite Aid where the town hall is. So, I think that as far as the site, this is the best tenant that we could pick and arrangement. If you're trying to put a drive-through on it, no way, no how. So, yeah.
got it. Thanks.
Of course.
Would anyone from the public like to speak? Are there any hands in Zoom?
No. Yes, M. Friedrichs has her hand up.
All right, Em?
Hello, I'm Friedrichs, 18 Garden Lane. I had a couple of questions about the current plan. The first one is I'm working with a group of Durham residents to look at the lighting standards from a couple of different angles. And so one question that came up in looking at this was the reasoning behind the higher lighting standard in front of the service entrance versus in front of the customer entrances that would then require a variance. So what was the rationale for needing a higher sort of lumen situation in front of that particular door?
Yeah, saying, I apologize, I didn't produce the lighting plan. We had a different company produce the lighting plan. And I would have to go and say that's most likely where the fixture is placed. So obviously right there is going to have the highest amount of foot candles, but fixture also needed to reach the middle of the drive aisle to provide adequate lighting for that specific part of the site. So I think that where that 12, 8, or 9 is, it's just it's an area that's going to be overlit because that needs to extend to a further spot. I don't know if that makes sense.
There is a notation too, I'm trying to find in the approval that Michael had put together, and it notes that they need to be dark sky compliant and have, I guess for lack of a better word, shields on them. So he's already looked at carefully, and we can also take another look at it and see if, number one is safety for us, whether it be, a customer coming in the front door or door. But beyond that, we're not looking to be noxious. So we most certainly will see if there's, maybe a different hood that we can put on the light or something like that to keep it on the property.
Well, I wonder, because there's a luminaire with higher luminance was chosen for the service entrance door when, one is available with luminaires of lower intensity for the other two doors. So I guess the question is, why can't the same lighting be used for all three doors?
Yeah, I think you're right. I can definitely contact our lighting sub and they can look into that.
But the lighting will be dark sky compliant with shields on the lights.
Michael does noted that all lights must be fully shielded.
Thank you. I was trying to find it. I knew it was
It's
in
number
here.
12.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. I would be, very interested in kind of hearing the, perhaps there's a valid need for that, but it would be interesting to hear the reasoning behind it. And kind of following along those lines, would it be something that you might be open to do motion sensor lighting in those locations?
I'm not saying no 100%, but I think about the motion detected lights that we've done in the past, and unfortunately they seem to fail so much more than a regular light. I'd much rather look to see if there's a better way of addressing it that doesn't allow for any bleed off the site and keeps it, closer or as close to the requirement as we can. But I find that when you have a light that stays on as well on a development rather than a motion, like alerts you and annoys you, rather than the constant light, if that makes any sense. So like at the hotel across from us, I can imagine this thing flicking off and on and off and on like all night long and someone's trying to sleep, whereas, there's a set amount of light coming, you close the curtains and, there might be a little bit of the curtain, but it remains, through the entire evening. But
Thank you. And that might be whether, so this group of residents, which includes some faculty from UNH, some of the things that they've been learning is that, for example, lighting that is bluer in the spectrum or sort of more of a traditional white light tends to attract insect vectors that can be problematic, such as mosquitoes and flies, and also interferes with the natural cycle of things like lightning bugs. So there's a recommendation to go towards yellower lighting.
Yep.
And wondering if that's something that you would be open to.
I don't have any issue with the color. Typically, I don't like to stay in that blue category. It's not something that I like whatsoever. I think it's around like 3,000 Kelvin, 3,500, something like that, that is the good color rating, so to speak. That's kind of a soft white. That's where we would be looking, and I'm happy to take the note and make sure that, we do that.
I think it's, well, it would be interesting to hear your feedback. What we've sort of been researching is closer to the 2,700 range in terms of what is.
Between 2,700 and like 3,000, it's not like you're up in the fours. So, we'll look at it, and as long as it meets the requirement for the candle power that we need or foot candles that we need, then I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that.
Thank you.
So I'd be a condition of approval that we satisfy the light requirements of, let's say plus or minus 3,000 Kelvin, and we can work with Michael to address whatever's appropriate based on getting a formal lighting plan back.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Robin Mower, Britton Lane. First, I appreciate greatly that something is going to be done in that site. It's wonderful that you figured it out. Obviously, not everything would work there, and it seems like this is going to work out. I also appreciate that Michael Barrett suggested or asked you to put in an ornamental tree. We've had some interesting experiences with trees and streetscapes here, and I don't know whether you are going to be consulting a professional landscape architect or somebody who, a landscaper, to be sure to choose something and have it planted well so that it will survive in that specific condition. And if you were thinking of a pear tree, I would suggest you try something else. Thank you.
Yeah.
Why did I know you were going to say that?
Actually, so Robin, the tree listed is the Japanese lilac.
Okay, thank you.
And we also have a requirement in here too that it has to make it through 2 growing seasons. So hopefully that'll suffice to get through the winter. And
2 growing seasons is,
Yeah.
I think, what is in our code.
Yep.
I would say that the urban forester, John Perry, who's familiar to the planning board, I believe told me that in his professional work with the USDA, they are now talking about 3. So if that's something that you're comfortable with, that would be great.
I'm not opposed to it. If a tree or a shrub doesn't look good, when I go by someone's project and I see those like orange arborvitaes, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Just take it out and replace. Like, yeah, it's a couple $100, but it's so
And if
worth.
you can use a gator bag or something, whatever they're called, a water gator or something, that obviously helps during periods of drought, and you don't have to be there every single day.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Seems reasonable.
Anyone else from the public? Any hands in Zoom?
No.
All right. Board
Just on
members.
public letters, there's 2 emails we got, but they aren't really necessarily that relevant. I don't think, one was about big changes at the intersection.
Yeah, so
So that
Mr.
doesn't really
Ickes
matter.
was talking about off-site improvements, and I did respond to him
Okay.
and gave him some feedback on those, and
And then one other was just somebody who thought it was too tight in that spot. So,
yeah.
that's an opinion.
Right.
So, all right, so how, are we ready to deliberate? Or do we want to,
We need a motion to close the public hearing?
well, if we're not ready to deliberate, then I'll keep the public hearing open.
Paul, Em has her hand up, excuse me.
Yes, Em?
All right. I realized that I was a little confused following this at this point. I heard mention of 11 parking spaces, but the last plan, I think both through the website, shows 15.
You
Is
missed the
that-
math. So Peyton had subtracted the 2 employee spots and the 2 handicap spots, and then was talking about the 11 that were for open.
Now I understand. All right. Thank you. And in terms of the landscaping, is the current plan still to remove all of those beautiful conifers that are between the site and the mobile
unfortunately be able to make it.
I understand because of the tightness of the
Yeah.
parking, and I do wish our revised to require less parking. If the Department of Transportation were to require kind of a one-way traffic flow through this plan and not allow cars to leave from Dover Road, so if that were entrance only and then the cars had to circulate one way and come out through the easement, would it be possible to shift those parking spaces slightly closer to the building and allow some sort of landscaping buffer between the two buildings?
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to answer that?
I mean, you don't have to answer that. If you'd like to, you can.
Certainly.
but
Well,
it's-
we, just out of respect, I'd most certainly like to. So most certainly, we've looked at all different kinds of access ideas. We've talked it over with DOT. Like I said, we had a site meeting with them. Part of it comes back to our tenant, too. Our tenant is given as much as they can, where they can. And right now, one-way circulation through that site, we don't see working.
And-
I'm sorry.
If I may, I am, there's no way you could do truck deliveries if you narrowed that.
Not to mention
You
you're
wouldn't be able to
moving,
get a truck around the back, and then once you got it out back, you'd never get it out of there again.
and you're moving closer and closer section, which is counterproductive. We really want that access point to be as far away as it can be, just because that's going to be the primary, functioning driveway.
Thank you.
I'm ready to deliberate.
We're ready to deliberate. We think we have everything we need now.
I'm satisfied.
All right, let's close the public hearing. I'll move we close the public hearing.
Second?
Any discussion before we do that? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. So actually, I wanted to ask you first, I mean, you're happy with the left turn
Yeah, I
situation?
think all the issues that were raised by DOT, it's all left in. I mean, there's no left out, and that's what DOT said, and that's what my anecdotes and comments I've received. So I think the traffic as shown works.
All right, so we'll be adding, and all the conditions in the notice of decision, you're fine with all those?
Yeah, the only thing that I was curious as to what the board was thinking is sometimes we've run into some challenges with the way in which bonds or surety for completion of project is handled. Again, we own a piece of property in town. You've seen that we are committed to getting it done, and other projects in the area. But nonetheless, I didn't know if the bond is set by the board, and if so.
It is not. The bond is managed by staff.
Okay. Okay. Then we'll just work with staff. Thank you. But yes, to answer the question, I'm fine with it.
Very good. So we're going to be adding a, let's see, it would be a condition for this lighting Kelvin thing. That would be let me think.
Under lighting.
Yeah, well, it's not a precedent. I'm not sure if it's a precedent condition or maybe it is a precedent.
Could you put it under the
Or
other precedent
general, I think
conditions?
other terms, yeah, I think that's going to be in other terms and conditions, so we're going to add
Other precedent conditions?
other terms and conditions.
Oh, other terms.
So this would
Right,
be,
it wouldn't be a precedent condition before
right, so
construction.
this would be so it'd probably be like a number 41, most likely,
Right.
with regards to the
Lighting.
lighting color.
So you want to just add it to line 12?
Yeah, that's possible.
Add it to line 12.
I would put it on under line 12, but that's not other, that's under
Yeah, well, it's part of the,
precedent conditions.
it would go on the plan, so
Other
that was
precedent.
fine. That as a
Yeah,
note
yeah,
on the plan.
Yeah, it would be fine to put it there.
Yeah.
Okay. number 12.
After all lights must be fully shielded and then within.
Paul, I had one question on line 25. The applicant is encouraged but not required to follow the energy checklist. Is that
I'm sorry, line
35?
35.
If I
heard
may-
a different number. All right.
If I may, we actually did in fact attend the meeting for the energy checklist. Scott and Matt did back a month ago.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And provided the list, went through with the architect and the engineer on best practices and such, so we've already been through that exercise. We didn't get any formal letter or note or anything like that, but it says it's volunteer, but we did in fact do it.
I just didn't know why it said but not required.
Because it's not required.
It is because it's a request, it's an optional request.
It's optional.
We don't require it yet.
Okay.
Maybe we should, but we don't.
So all right. We need to, and everybody's good with the waiver for the lighting, the waiver for the parking spaces,
Yeah.
as well as the waiver. All right. Okay. And Munish, I know you have, you're welcome to vote yea or nay, to abstain. If you feel you haven't been around long enough on this project to make a valid decision.
But if you have questions, you,
Absolutely ask anything you want, yes. Is there anything else you think has issues with?
I don't, as long as they don't.
Would it be appropriate just kind of to summarize for the public in light of this is moved in a way that's favorable since the original proposal, and I think the applicant has done a good job of dealing with the primary concerns, which the big picture is that this is a potentially increased traffic flow next to a very busy intersection, one that typically piles up traffic at the intersection as a result of the limited capacity of the left turn lane on the westbound. I can imagine that behind the scenes there was some tension. I mean, obviously Dunkin' Donuts wants as much access as they can. So there was a negotiation that we weren't privy to, where Dunkin' Donuts had to get comfortable with the idea that we were not comfortable with a left turn lane, which would reduce the holding capacity of the left turn lane on Dover Road going into downtown. And to me, that was, compared to all the other issues, the biggest issue. Now, I think the in and out traffic and the left turn onto Dover Road, that's also a potential issue because it would create some challenges. And that was also satisfactorily addressed. So from my perspective, there's been and this is in part for you, there's been significant movement to address the major concern that was presented by the original proposal. And I think the town is also, so I think it's a good proposal. And I also was persuaded that the applicant is, although it's not a requirement, in fact, I think it just makes the redevelopment of the Irving site is also a very attractive element of this for the town. So that's just, I wanted to summarize the picture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you did it reasonably well.
I think the only other item is number 24. I don't want the landscaping guarantee needs to be modified to 3 years rather than 2.
Oh, right.
We've agreed to that, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if you didn't give it to me, I was going to do it no matter what, so.
Is this in the historic district?
Yes.
Do we want a sign that commemorates Cumberland Farms existing?
I'll put a sticker.
If indeed we feel that there needs to be some commemoration of the old Cumberland Farms, which one day will be an historical impact.
Which actually,
Eric and I can discuss that at the HDC.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to take a crack at the motion? Maybe I should just do it. Okay. I'll move that the site plan for demolition of existing vacant building and redevelopment of a new Dunkin' Donut opposite side of Dover Road is relocating to the site at 3 Dover Road. Per the notice of decision as amended this evening, be approved. This notice includes 3 waivers for landscaping, lighting, and parking spaces, being in the side setback. This is at map 108, lot 38 in Courthouse District.
Second?
Seconded by Councilor Lund. Discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Opposed?
abstained.
Abstained by Munish. Very good.
Thank you all so very much. If
Thank
at
you.
any time anything comes up, please feel free to call me on my phone. And might I just give this copy of the letter to you, Mr. Chairman, from DOT, just so you have it for
Very
your
good.
records?
Yep.
We do look forward to a refurbished Circle K there over there. Your Newfield story is absolutely beautiful, by the way.
So you have it, bring, just so you have it. Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
That has to get filed special.
Okay.
All right. Next item is item 9. Public hearing for the proposed zoning amendment, multi-unit residential. Proposed amendment to allow multi-unit residential in the professional office, Church Hill, and courthouse zoning districts by right. The proposed amendment was initiated by the town council on March 17th. We'll start by opening the public hearing.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Lund. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Would anyone like to speak on this item?
M has her hand up in Zoom.
All right, you have the,
Hi, thank you. There's been some developments at the State House since this idea was moved from town council to the planning board. And because of that, I would personally ask that the planning board consider holding on to this item and scheduling it for a few months out when there's additional clarity available from the State House. The issue is that there has been an amendment to, a last minute amendment to a Senate bill. Senate bill would make school enrollment a protected class. And as a result, it would essentially erase the work that the town did recently to create the category of student rental and to further define that. And so essentially, any multi-unit building could immediately become a student rental multi-unit building. And I think there's not enough in place to create the type of transition that we would hope for between downtown and the residential neighborhoods if we were to remove conditional use. I think, ideally an ordinance in the future would provide some of those guidelines, that those sorts of buffering setbacks, the sorts of plans that would enable some sort of transition between downtown noise and busyness and the adjacent neighborhoods. And when you look at how it's currently zoned, for example, Church Hill, the setback, I believe on the side is only 5 feet to abutting family homes. And in the back, I believe it's 15 feet. And so the idea that this could be developed by right, multi-unit student housing, potentially a lot of parties, a lot of noise. There's not really guidelines to create that sort of transition to residential neighborhoods that we would hope for. And so until there's clarity on the Senate bill and whether school enrollment would now be considered a protected class, I think it would be helpful to postpone further deliberation of this change.
Thank you. I would like to make a procedural comment at this time. This, as was stated in the introduction, is a council-initiated amendment. As such, the planning board is on a clock to make a response to the town council one way or the other with comments. Our clock runs out in 3 days. I did speak with the chair of the town council prior to this meeting about a potential 2-week delay to give us time in case we needed more time to come up with appropriate comments. But delaying it for several months is not an option. We will have to come to a decision on this time this month. All right. Mr. Meyerowitz, you seem to grab the mic here.
All right, so I think I'm looked up, but I'm not seeing anything on the screen.
No, you are not broadcasting anything on the screen, right?
Anything?
Nothing's showing.
Well, I've got
Are you,
this.
are you using your own connector or one of our
Is
connectors?
that you can just put
That should go right into your computer.
You can
If
put it
that's
right through your computer.
That HDMI should, do you
Can
have
I-
HDMI?
show.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
While we're waiting, can I ask him a question?
If it's a Dell, and you can go directly,
Or
you can put
Em, are you
this
still there?
directly into that.
Well, I don't have an HDMI out.
Oh, you
Yes.
don't have
Oh,
an
we gotta use
HDMI?
I always use this one.
Try our connector from that batch of connectors.
So, the Senate bill gets resolved when? Like soon, in the next couple of weeks, or?
that depends. It's not resolved until
Is this the same?
this one's going to make it to the senator's desk, so it's not resolved until the governor either decides to sign it or not.
I've always successfully used this.
I have a
so
question.
don't know why.
Eric,
Yes.
were you aware of this Senate? I mean, it seems sort of that the compression of time as the result of the triggering mechanism at the town council. It seems to me that it's quite difficult to develop an informed response.
I believe that the amendment to the Senate bill under discussion was brought forward after the council initiated the amendment.
Yeah.
So that is
So-
why
so-
we're in sort of
so
this.
the situation has altered from the time at which the council approved this, initiated the amendment.
So I guess I'd look to Paul for some procedural solution to what is kind of an artificially created time compression.
As I said, we need to give the council our recommendation. We can recommend yay, we can recommend nay. In either case, we can provide comments as to why we said that or how to make it better. So, that's a choice for us. We could always,
And it being a council initiated, the council, this particular amendment, as a couple of others have come out of a request from the council to
what we're doing here tonight is we're going to be advising the town council on how to proceed.
I understand that.
Okay? So
I just don't know how to do it under the circumstances with the ambiguity that Em has raised.
Well, if we feel that it's too ambiguous to move forward, we say, no, we don't move forward. at this
Okay,
time.
that was good. That was my question.
That's a perfectly rational thing to do.
Yeah.
And the ambiguity may or may not be, considering if it does pass the House, it won't matter.
Right.
It won't matter, and if
Okay,
it doesn't.
are we ready for the public again?
Craig thinks it's something downstairs because it's
seems to be working here, he says, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
You could sit.
All right, well, if you,
Let someone else
You can
go.
let
shall
someone
we,
else speak.
I think, Robin, you were, all right. We'll let Craig see if he can, meanwhile, we'll take a couple other people.
Robin Moore, Britton Lane. This is about the change to a right multi-unit buildings, residential on Churchill, Co-Drive, et cetera.
Church,
Blah, blah, blah. Right,
PO.
okay, right, got it. So I don't know whether you've all had a chance to read a note sent by Diana and John Carroll, but I thought it'd be useful for the public as well to hear it. It's very brief. I'll read it and then make a few comments of my own. We are writing to express our concern for the proposed changes to Durham zoning for downtown Churchill Courthouse and professional office districts. We've read about these potential changes in Friday updates, but we have not seen any attempt to demonstrate how the landscape and views would be altered by the proposed new zoning. For example, balloons can, and in the past have been, attached to rooftops showing how high the new roof line would be. Schematic drawing, and especially three-dimensional schematics, could help the decision-making process. And please show how much green space would exist if the proposed zoning became a reality. I'm going to interject. I understand that that would probably just be for an application, but obviously they're concerned about the landscaping and the views and so forth. We are all living in an unprecedented era where we were certain that many public and private government regulations, procedures, etc. would not change much. At this time, many of the things are changing drastically. And where does that leave us? Where does that potentially leave our town? Many residents are preoccupied with following these government actions daily and to town the Durham news, including the proposed zoning changes the planning board has brought forward. This is not a time to push for major changes to our zoning that will have a serious impact on our town. If the planning board chooses to continue research, explore, discuss further ideas for revitalizing Durham, do so, but this is substantial changes in our zoning. And that's the end of the letter from Diana and John Carroll on Canny Road. So I some of their caution about making drastic changes at this time. What is the urgency? So attempts to revitalize downtown surely cannot occur in the immediate future, given the uncertainties in the business, construction, governmental, and academic arenas. And I believe we have empty commercial space as it is. I have a bunch of questions. One, why do you believe that multi-unit buildings will not become student apartments? What makes you think that we could attract developers for anything other than student apartments? History teaches us differently, particularly when there is no parking for non-student occupants. Or is this a not very subtle way of encouraging a particular developer? Two, why would you propose ignoring the very features of our entrance over Church Hill that make Durham different from other towns and attractive to visitors and residents alike? The two churches at the crest of the hill are, on the one hand, quintessential New England, and on the other, have a unique design that includes extensive stained glass. The Red Tower building and other structures in these zones connect us visually to the town's own history. As similar-looking institutional-sized structures replace those that emerged organically throughout our history, and as we move away from structures of human scale, we are already experiencing aesthetic loss, as in Hilton hotelization or chain store blandness. Large-scale structures would then loom over our small downtown from both the east and the west. As it is, with fraternities and student apartments occupying large portions of downtown, visitors often cannot tell where Durham actually is. With larger structures, we can also anticipate the loss of social capital. Small-town streetscapes encourage social interaction. And to remove conditional use would mean that anything goes. So to allow multi-unit buildings by right is to risk killing the golden goose of fable. Is that really what you want for Durham's future? And finally, do you also propose to revisit the architectural design standards and the site plan regs to eliminate all mention of human scale? Thank you.
All right, Joshua.
All right, Joshua Morrow at 7 Chesley Drive. I wanted to address the multi-unit housing issue, and also, as you may recall, I did comment about that preemptive rezoning that was felt to be needed to stop the implications of the House bill, and I did have, echoing my beginning of this meeting, have a lot of concerns about the procedures there, where it seemed to be very much under the radar, and I think that there is some input that happened as part of that rapid planning board and council rezoning that echo in this now further discussion. And as I mentioned on February 23rd, in a public comment, sort of general comment about present and future plans, that regarding all rezoning proposals, I would hope the planner, Barron, who's not here, and the old timers, including Richard Kelly, not here, would always keep in mind past proposals and reviews that generated a lot of controversy, heartache, and some trauma, both for members of the public and board members, and often for the developers as well. And I hope that those who have those memories would guide the board away from rezoning proposals that might unnecessarily repeat those controversies and traumas from positive progress in Durham. So I'm speaking about a particular trauma on Churchill in terms of the threat to Churchill Woods, and we don't know what will come of it if this rezoning comes in, but it opens up a re-traumatization of the years of engagement of the public. Churchill Woods is a significant sound, light, heat, and stormwater buffer. It's a unique urban forest in Durham, and you can see the geography here with the Urso Anderson, my home, and my neighbors. And the Urso home on Smith Park Lane now abuts an urban forest. You can see it in the winter on the left, and in the summer on the right. There's an old stone wall that's the boundary between Churchill Woods and the Anderson side yard and the Urso property. Presented to you in various contexts before. This is it's a steep slope that drops 42 feet and drains into the Chesley Marsh, which is on the Anderson property, which then drains into what might be the most polluted body of water in the state, where we get a lot of flooding on the College Brook footbridge and on the in the brook itself. And the top right is actually, that's my house in the background, and actually the footbridge is on the edge of my property, and we get a lot of flooding and a lot of erosion already without any structures there. This is the Churchill Woods as seen from the Andersons' dining room at 8 Chesley Drive. This is, what would a multi-unit housing unit look like from here. And this, you can see the proximity here. This is actually shot from my front porch. That's my front porch light on the left. You see, looking up the Churchill Woods, the Andersons across the street, Urso's also across the street up on the hill. And in terms of the history of this, in 2008, as Richard Kelly at least might remember, there was a proposal to expand the central business district up Church Hill. And in the Economic Development Committee, the then Town Council Chair Neil Nyman, quote, passed a motion to forward the zoning map amendment to the Town Council with expand the central business district up Churchill District to Smith Park Lane. And part of the plan was to put multi-story student housing that had been discussed. At the Planning Board public hearing on the proposed amendment, June 18, 2008, no one spoke in favor of it, and a number of people spoke against it. You can see the minutes there. The Planning Board then recommended the map not be amended as proposed. And the Town Council held a public hearing on the same proposal on August 8, 2008. No one spoke in favor, and the number of people critiqued the process through which such major changes had been proposed, echoing what you heard at the beginning of this meeting today. The motion to enact this by a vote of 2 in favor of the change and 7 against. Even Council Chair Neil Nyman, who had started this whole process for this proposed EDC, said per the meeting minutes that, quote, he couldn't get past the idea of passing something that no one wanted. So I think there's a history here of 2008, but also 4 years of battle over the Churchill Woods project. And I really would discourage anything that would bring that back. And also what's been mentioned, you could have 80% non-permeable surface. You could have, there was like 5 feet and 15 feet from family homes. I mean, we don't know what is proposed. And as I've said also on April 23rd, and I may say again in another public hearing tonight, you know, it's true that maybe no one will propose anything that is that's bad, that's facilitated by this change. But why open the door to something that's really bad, rather than at this point of zoning, trying to zone for things we want and zone against things that we don't want. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Are there any hands in Zoom?
No.
Hi, my name is Carol Birch. I live at 17 Garden Lane. I have the most awful sense of deja vu, and I'm just making big changes now. Seems crazy to me, and I would just urge you to think and plan and get the public behind you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bethel Shansky, Packers Falls Road. I appreciate Josh a little history. I've been following the planning board for the last 25 years. And as I look around the board, you know, we have a lot of relatively new members. So it is good to be reminded of some of the institutional knowledge that exists in the community. So I'm opposed to this change for a number of reasons. I'm talking about making the multi-units in POCD and Churchill conditional use.
That's not what we're doing, that we're making them permitted.
Oh, thank you. Making them permitted, thank you.
They've gone from
I knew you meant, I meant
Yes.
that.
They're going from not permitted to
Yeah.
permitted.
They're going from conditional use to permitted.
In professional office, they're going from CUA to permitted.
Okay.
District's
Residents-
under direction.
And in the
under
courthouse
direction.
in Churchill, it's X to P.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm opposed to it because this is the thing. I don't know who you think is going to live there. I mean, I know the Housing Committee has been working very hard for a couple of years to try to figure out how to get more diverse housing in Durham. Unfortunately, we have a huge university nearby, and I can't imagine students not living in these multi-unit places. And I know at this time, I've heard people say, well, we're swamped with student housing, there's not a demand right now. But things change. I don't believe in zoning for something you don't want, and even if it's in the future. I might have mentioned this before, but I register students to vote over the years, and because I've been involved in supporting several student housing developments throughout town, I always like to converse with students when they, where do you live? When they live out at the lodges or at, what's the other place out?
Cottages.
Pardon me?
The cottages?
The cottages, thank you, Sally. I'm like, how do you like it out there? Every single one of them says, next year I want to live in town. I've never heard a student who's living in town saying they want to move out of town. So even if the demand, we think, the market, I could imagine students who live out of town finding it very desirable to move into town, into these. I don't know how you get more diverse housing in downtown Durham, but I don't think this is going to be a successful way of doing it. I know we're also trying to revitalize our downtown or bring in more diverse businesses, and that's been, an ongoing 20-year chant, but, more students, to me, means more tattoo parlors, more pizza joints and beer, and it's not going to bring in the kinds of businesses that I think people in the broader community would appreciate. I wonder, given these changes, if anyone has bothered to do like a build-out analysis, looking at the actual different zones and how many dense multi-unit buildings could be built if this were approved, and how many more occupants, likely students, that would be. I mean, that's something that would be part of a planning process that would be interesting. I mean, I understand that even though this was originated at the town council, really it germinated with the housing committee, who obviously has a particular interest in creating more housing, but I still think it's a tough call in Durham when you're creating more opportunities for housing downtown, and especially with now these pending state regs, how it's not going to end up being student housing. And, I appreciate M referencing these pending state legislation, and that Eric acknowledging that the germination of this plan happened before we now became aware of what's happening at the state. I think this is the wrong time to open up the barn door without any discretionary opportunities through conditional use to do this, because we don't know in a month or two, or whenever things get settled at the state, we have no idea what Durham's going to be facing. And I agree absolutely with M. Friedrichs that we should table this. And I understand that you need to get back to the planning, to the council on this, but I would hope that you would understand the interesting predicament we're in as a community with the state regs changing, and just report back that you agree that this would be something we should look at after we know what our state regulations are going. Thank you.
Anne Marie Harris, 56 Oyster River Road, Durham. I just want to acknowledge that I agree with many of the concerns that have been expressed by the members of the public that are here tonight, and I know of many other people in my neighborhood, the faculty neighborhood, who have great concern about the imposition of additional student housing in the downtown. Thank you.
Are there any hands in Zoom?
No.
Is there anyone else here in the chambers that would like to speak? I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Public hearing's closed. What do we want to do with this one?
Well, are we prepared to chat about it tonight, or we want to put it off? Or?
I think,
mean,
I think this one's going to require some serious discussion and preparation of comments. And we still have three more items on our agenda tonight. So I'm thinking we'll hold deliberations at the workshop.
I would recommend that we do that, and then possibly also to put together some explanations as to why, and some historical understanding of what's going on. But it is also important, and I say this with members of here, and who may already know, but members of the public. One thing I often see happening in public hearing, a concern for what is coming, but without always understanding what's already allowed in an area. And right now, in that, if you don't, we already allow senior housing multi-unit. That is allowed, and senior care facilities are allowed by right, be large looming buildings and would have parking lots. So if indeed it's about keeping large looming buildings out, they're already allowed. Also, light industry is allowed in those areas. So it's important just to be aware of the table of uses. And I would also comment that there has been a long-standing, and this is just my personal observation from the many years I've spent dealing with zoning and the public in the different roles that I've had here in town, is that there's often been a long understanding or fear or concern, pick your word, that any housing turns into student housing. And that has been a battle we've been trying to deal with for a long time. And it has left us with no housing but student housing. There are certainly things to take into consideration with the drops of enrollment and what developers are actually developing now. But I just would be aware of that.
Right. I'd like to move on.
Yeah. So we're gonna
I
take
just
this for
have
the-
one question about,
Yeah.
when you go from CU to P, what's the risk here for a developer? Is it time? Like, I got to go through the CU process and it's going to take me a lot of time?
Time and money.
Yeah.
Or is it the risk that I'm going to go through that process and get denied?
So if
Both.
it's a P, then they know they can come in and it's a site plan review.
Right.
All right, at the end of the day, their project is just how it's configured. With a CU, they can go through that and then never even get a project. And that's the risk to the
So
developer.
it's time and risk.
Yeah.
And can I just ask, is there a different bar required for CU than for P in terms of any kind of voting or anything like that?
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
threshold?
Oh, yeah.
And just for the public comment, because I think it's good to have this. So what is that different threshold between that is a CU requirement that's different?
One vote.
And
Yeah. CU requires a 2/3 majority.
right, so CU requires a 2/3 majority, where a P is just a simple majority.
Correct.
And just as another historical point of reference, are there any historical situations where a CU spent a significant amount of time in a CU and then been denied by that single vote?
Yes.
And if so, what's the scale of that?
Mill Plaza.
Yes, the mill road failed
By one vote.
by one vote. It was 4-3, and they would have needed 5-2.
And so I guess you could assume, CU, certain, if there's a historical memory on the developer's perspective, CU is very not dangerous, introduces a significant amount of risk, I would say, that they may want to consider as they move forward.
Right.
And so that's a significant change.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think for practical purposes, I wouldn't be. Yeah.
Well, we're not
We're
going
going
to.
to be doing full deliberations at the workshop.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have comments you'd like to make to the audience, I'll allow those, but let's keep our internal
I
deliberations.
would like to make a comment, and I know I've said it before, so I might. So there was a Beth had you were discussing that, and it just struck me, and you said, unfortunately, we live in a town with a large university here. And, I'm not sure I share that perspective. I say we're maybe blessed to live in a town with a large university here. And I would say most of us probably moved here when, in fact, the university was here. So I moved here, and the university was a huge asset. So.
Can I just respond? I don't want to be misunderstood.
Oh.
I'm not against the university, just a student.
It's just the students and all of the et cetera, things that come along with the university, like students.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm just trying to just clarify that point. When we moved here, there was a university here. And I think it's been here
All
for
right,
quite a
folks.
while. So I just wanted to
Moving
just
on.
say, the difficulty is how do we balance the competing interests, I
Yes, we
think.
closed it. Peyton?
Yes.
We
That's-
closed the
we're
public
done.
hearing.
Moving on to item,
But you're having a discussion, and in fact, I've been here since 1969, and there were far fewer.
item 10 is a public hearing on proposed zoning amendment, three-story height
It's
limit.
Incompatible lifestyles in
Proposed-
town.
Proposed amendment to remove the three-story height limitation in sections of the central business district and to allow 4 floors of residential with only 1 floor of commercial on the first floor in a 5-story building in the CBD. Presently, a 5-story building in the CBD must contain at least 2 floors of commercial. The first item was initiated by the town council on March 17th.
One question on this. This is going to apply to CB 1 and 2, right?
No, this would be
no,
just for
just CB1.
CB1.
CB 1.
CB2 stays at 3,
Okay.
right? So
Yes.
I was just wanted to make
CB2
sure I
keeps,
get.
we kept the heights lower at
Well,
CB. We
yeah.
changed that with CB2, with the amendment, right?
Right. So this is applying, all these changes would apply only to what would be CB1,
Right.
Yep,
assuming that division takes place,
right.
Not 2,
not 2.
so not in Mill Plaza.
Okay.
All right. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this item? I'm sorry. I'll move that we open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this?
All right, let's try this again.
Joshua Morrow at 7 Chesley Drive, so I'll call this after my public comment on April 23rd, Mind the Gap, about the building heights and some of the things I said. So I mentioned then that I would hope that members of the board, when considering new ideas, always keep in mind some of the enduring problematic and positive features of the town of Durham. And by the way, I was very much in favor of the Doug Clark building on 74 Main Street, and even at the higher height, and I was very supportive of the workshop housing, so I would be open to counter arguments here, but one of the enduring positive features of Durham is a reasonable relative scale. In our very tiny and narrow Main Street, without a tunnel or cavern effect, with tall buildings on both sides of Main Street, with special exceptions for unique locations such as Doug Clark's building across from Holloway Commons. So, but I went out to Main Street just to shoot what we have now, and trying to, I would say if anything like this is being considered, we need to see some digital renderings of what it would look like if we actually allow 4-story and even 5-story on this strip. And it seems to me it would look quite different. And if you look at this panoramic view, so you see the Pauley's Pocket building on the right, and if with this change, that would be, if all the buildings went to 4-story, that would be the smallest building. If it went to 4 or 5, so you have a completely different landscape there. And this is including now the UNH building on the left also. And what would it look like if we had 4 and possibly 5-story buildings? And I don't know if there've been comparisons to other university towns, but I stuck in some pictures from Hanover. And so is this what we want to have when we come up Mill Road? I don't, I'll leave it to people to evaluate. I think it's a whole other feel, a whole other scale. And again, related to the larger issue, I was concerned, that I mentioned last time also, about the going for simplicity of change when the detailed hard needed, including studying other college towns, what they look like, what's the scale. And not to say, well, this change would allow X, Y, and it might not be that good, but it's unlikely anyone would propose those bad things. I'd say avoid opening the doors to possible bad developments, even if they now seem unlikely to be proposed. This is Hanover. Study of these towns and the scale and how things like that would fit in Durham. But also, and other people have mentioned this, and it relates to that particular use of, unfortunately, with respect to Durham, but always to keep a sharp eye out for the huge distinction between grade and the trickier challenge of identifying the mechanism for achieving those ideas. So I love the idea of student residents to the downtown core to support a variety of Durham businesses year-round. And I wholeheartedly endorse that idea. But the absence of the mechanism to achieve that goal, in the absence of that, we're likely to get part of the year residents. And the university is a great asset to the town, but there also is this need for balance. And I don't see here the mechanism for making it non-student housing. And if senior housing would be good, but at only 200 square feet per resident or occupant, I think that there needs to be a mechanism to make that happen. I think Doug Clark's project, he had some ways of structuring that. I don't see that discussion here in terms of how to make that happen. Also, by the way, the vitality of the student in town, the perception of that varies from where you live. So if you're far away from the 2 a.m. noise and whatever, then you're not aware of what happens till 2 a.m. when you live downtown. And if we want to have Durham have this more vital, diverse residential base, there needs to be some mechanism for making that happen besides just building more units. So I would say mind the gap, as the sign says in the London Underground. Let's not fall into the chasm between good ideas and no devised means of achieving them. So I think there's more work that needs to be done on this, looking at other college towns, doing renderings of what Main Street would look like when some or all the buildings go to 4 or 5 stories, and what would be the predictable outcome of just raising the limits of the heights and reducing the amount of required commercial space without providing mechanisms for bringing about the change that we have. So that's my summary comment on this. Commendable goal, but not the mechanism for achieving it, is what I see. Thank you.
Next.
Can I just say something to Josh as she's coming? Josh.
We can't hear you.
Oh.
Hey, Josh,
Yeah.
Sally wants to talk to you.
If you stop by and talk to Roger Hayden at Hayden Sports and ask him to look at the plan that the 4 guys put together a few years ago, he's got the plans of it, and it shows exactly what you're talking about.
It has the renderings, you're saying?
Yes, yep, color
So that would be
renderings.
good to include in your
Yep.
packet and for
Because
the
they had a
public.
4-story hole of that hole that's now on 1 story. A few years ago, they wanted to
Thank you for sharing
redevelop
that.
it.
I think it would be good to actually have that as part of the publicly accessible documents for this discussion.
Well, they're private documents.
They're
What
private
was that?
documents.
They're private documents. You can go
Private
ask to see them, but we
documents.
can't
So you have
have
to give
them.
me the password to get.
Go ask Roger Hayden.
Roger Hayden.
At Hayden Sports.
No, I know, I was joking.
Just say, I want to buy a T-shirt. That's the password.
2 T-shirts will be better.
Beth?
Okay, Beth Olshansky, Packers Falls Road. Another bit of history. So obviously the town has wrestled with the downtown, how to revitalize the downtown for many years. And one of the things we also heard is that Durham has such a small commercial. and that we wanted to protect some of that. So for instance, when we had 3-story zoning, 1-story commercial, 2 stories residential. When we moved to allowing for 4 stories in some parts of downtown, it was 2 stories commercial and 2 stories residential. Because we were just, if we were going to give a developer the opportunity to have more density, that we wanted something back which was preserving some more, eking out some more. If I'm correct now, in this proposal, it looked like if we had 5 stories, only 1 floor commercial and 4 floors of residential. So we're kind of giving away, or perhaps giving up, I don't know, the idea that Durham wants more viable commercial space. And, at one point there was talk about, well, if we had 4 stories, maybe the 4th floor would be like a penthouse restaurant or something like that. I mean, there are some interesting things that could be done above just the main 1st floor commercial. But, so that's one issue that I think is a little problematic. We're just saying, okay, let's pack it in with more residences. To add to that, we have in the last half year or something also reduced the density increased the density so that instead of the previously required 300 square feet per occupant, we're now at 200. So we're making smaller spaces, adding more residential units relative to commercial space. And again, I'll say it again, it's hard not to imagine who's going to move in there. I know, Sally, you're smirking, but I don't know, maybe your son would like to move there, but there aren't that many. I mean, relatively a lot more people at the university who need
It's market.
space.
It's everywhere in the market right now.
So that's a big concern. Aesthetically, thank Josh for giving us that view of looking up Mill Road. I mean, that is also looking up from below. Looking up at a 4 or 5-story building from that Mill Road perspective, it's totally going to turn our little downtown into a much more urban environment. Is that what we want? And I also think, the idea of, well, the 5th floor could be set back 10 or 20 feet. That's good if you're walking on the sidewalk and look up, you don't see that 5th floor. Down Mill Road, you definitely see that 5th floor. And it's, so out of scale with what we have. And we saw Polly's on Josh's slides. Imagine Polly's with 2 more floors, which would be permitted. I mean, it's just enormous. I guess that, and the other thing is we now do have a difference. Along Main Street, we have a distinction between what can be built to the left of TNC, if you were looking at, where our current new parking lot, farmers market places, down to the university. At the current time, 4 stories are allowed there, and 3 stories are allowed, only permitted, including TNC. If we get to a point where we feel like, we really have to jumpstart everything, I would like to see a more nuanced approach than just the whole Main Street strip allowing for 5 stories by conditional use. I'd like to consider that optional, the 4 stories where we have it to the left of TNC with the optional 5th story, which is more like opposite the university, and those buildings are more set back. There's a wider streetscape kind of thing, and that we don't allow 5 stories for the rest of that Main Street, and that the 4th story be conditional use, just because that is such an important viewscape. So, to be clear, TNC and East my proposal would be 3 stories with a 4-story conditional use, and to the west, 4 stories with a 5th-story conditional use, just as being a bit more moderate and not just turning our tiny little downtown into this just extreme urban, very dense streetscape. And, of course, I've already expressed my concern about just ending up being more students and more generating more student-oriented businesses. So the other piece is going to bring in Emily M. Friedrich's concern again. This is another area where I think we should table the happen at the state. It just doesn't make sense to make these drastic changes to our zoning when in a month or two we could be just like totally underwater with these zoning changes that unlike the town has ever been confronted with before. So that would be my actual request, real request, is that we just hold off till we know what's going to happen at the state. Thank you.
Robin Moore, Britton Lane. 2 things. Has every one of you walked through town, including from Faculty Road, up Mill Road, both in the, at different times of day, different times of the year, to see what it feels like as you would walk up towards Main Street and imagine having 5 stories there? For the life of me, I cannot understand why a town this size would look to have 5-story buildings in its small downtown. It's inconceivable to me. But the second thing is that I think that it would make sense to postpone decisions about this part of town, some buildings on this part of town, to coordinate with what you think would be appropriate for CB2. I know that split has not been discussed, approved, whatever yet. But that's where something more holistic would make sense, it seems to me. Because as Beth said earlier, I want to have a transition that's driven by just approving higher 5-story buildings up on Main Street, so then you can have much higher buildings in CB2 in Mill Plaza development. Maybe there's a better way. So trying to coordinate those in a real sort of holistic planning would be my suggestion. Thanks.
Are there any hands in Zoom?
No.
Anyone else here in chambers? All right, let's close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
The second.
Second, right? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so what do we want to do with this one? Do we want to work on it tonight, or we still have, I think we need to move this one to the workshop as well.
Yeah, because we have 2 more in front of us. We can't
Yeah.
ask them to sit here while we talk. It's just a little rude. And again,
What information do we need to help deliberation in the next meeting?
Well, that's the question.
Is there an advocate for this proposal
There
who
is.
should be up here saying, here's why this is awesome?
Yeah, the Housing Task Force and the Town Council.
I think we can,
Okay, yeah.
I think the people around this table will have that.
All right. I do think there is one thing to keep in mind when it comes to student development, that there's a tendency to equate students with undergraduate students, and this is perfectly rational to do because the overwhelming majority of the students here are undergraduates, but the university does have graduate students as well. They are a very different population. As I routinely work with graduate students at UNH. I was a graduate student once. Graduate students tend to be a year-round population, and a PhD program would typically take 6 years or so. As things currently stand, graduate students are definitely underrepresented in Durham. Most of the graduate students that I work with end up in Dover. There's one out in Nottingham. This may be something that we would need to coordinate with the university on, but a lot of these proposals would become much more palatable to the community of whole if we got more graduate students live.
Yeah,
No, I agree with you. Too bad that graduate students have the smallest pocketbook when it comes to being able to rent a place.
I think for the conversation, I think there are some facts that haven't been brought into play
Yeah,
here.
and-
And the reasoning behind the
And
council.
which we'll get into at the
Yeah,
workshop, I
and then
think.
perhaps some clarity. I think we do need to have clarity on what the state stuff is. Bring those so people understand fully what those are and what the implications actually would be on us. And so that we have that, we really understand what they're talking about.
Does this one have the same ticker on it?
Yes. it
Yes,
does.
it's
This one has
And
the
you
same-
said that
council
was 3
initiated
days from now?
amendment.
It would
Yeah.
expire, yeah, it's,
Because
our
it was-
ticker expires in about 3
4
days.
weeks ago. So we'll have to get an
So,
extension.
So for both of these, we're proposing,
We're,
the answer
I'm going to
is
take
no
the,
change
we're going to
for
take the
now.
2 weeks. Well, we'll
No,
decide
no,
that at the
no.
workshop. What we're going to do is we're going to, I'll let town council know that we need 2 more weeks so that we
We can
can
discuss it.
at the workshop and still get tonight's business done.
Necessarily say, we're going to just not act on this. We will, we could. I mean,
Yeah.
many of us are still, yeah.
Right. If
Right.
things
There-
are too
there are-
uncertain, then we have to,
Yeah.
no.
There are some things I think that do need to be addressed, and especially the reasoning for why this is coming forward is pretty important to the town's economic health.
All right, what I would like to do at this point, I think, is, we do not have a ticker on the next item. I would,
Are they here?
yeah.
Plan unit
PUD,
development.
The PUD?
Oh, the PUD.
The
Oh, yeah.
PUD. I would like to pose, is that accept, is there anyone here with, well, actually, or well, we have people here. We could
We
open
have
a public
people
hearing.
here.
Oh.
This poor guy
Yeah.
is here.
Okay,
Let's open
yeah,
it.
very good. Okay, let's do
That's
it.
like the worst, isn't it?
So do we need to
I-
close the public hearing on this current?
We did.
We already did.
We did.
All right. Item 11, public hearing, plan unit development ordinance, proposed plan unit development ordinance. These are special zoning tools which allow for flexible and innovative planning for large-scale mixed-use projects. The draft ordinance has been prepared to accommodate the potential development of the Edge project at UNH, located westerly and southerly of the intersection of Main Street and Mast Road, and other potential large mixed-use projects. Shall we open the public hearing?
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak on this one? I didn't realize you were here.
Wait, that
I
would've
wasn't
been-
expecting any comments on this one, okay.
See them, I'm like, oh.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Craig Seymour. I am a former 46-year resident of Durham Point Road, involved in town government and also a business owner for more than 30 years here in town. My background is in real estate economics and consulting, and I just wanted a little bit of history, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm in favor of this, but I have a suggestion for the PUD ordinance for you to think about. First, I want to congratulate you members of the board and Michael for the hard work you've put into this. These types of ordinances and any kind of zoning change, you know, is really, really hard work. And this one has been crafted over a period of time and changed a little bit. But it is getting there. It is there, I think, and this one is being crafted for a specific, very, very important project. The development of the west side of Durham has been talked about since the 80s when I was on the planning board, when I was in one of those seats over in the old town hall. It was always envisioned to be a mix of public and private activity going on, and because it was a mix. There was UNH land, there was, you know, restricted land, agricultural land, but there's also some private pieces of property over there, which have now pretty much been built out with the ledges and some of the other student housing that's all out there. More recently, and this has been about the last 4 years ago, the university's concept of creating a vision for their west edge, the Edge project, has come about, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You've seen the presentations on it, you've talked about it. when that first started, Michael Barron came to me with the experience I've got nationally, and started asking what are some innovative ways that zoning ordinances can be done to accommodate the kinds of uses there, the project, this vision that they want for this mixed-use neighborhood, innovation neighborhood that's out there. What it came about, and I looked around and looked, particularly with my experience with base closures and other things around the country, the idea of a PUD is used in a lot of different places, and it's a common tool used in zoning to accommodate these kinds of complex public-private ventures. And the whole private venture came to light on this, and it's a very important concept to think about, and the concept within which the PUD needs to ride and needs to be part of. What a PPV does, public-private ventures, allows the university in this case, and the state of New Hampshire, and the town to leverage private knowledge about real estate development and private dollars that are at stake to come in and help with that process. There's really, I see, three major objectives to the PUD and the underlying philosophy behind it. One was to ensure that Durham had a spot on the table in the development of the EDGE project. It was bringing water, sewer, and of course zoning to it. And otherwise, the university could really much, as you know, could do anything they want out there because they're exempt from zoning. So that was one of the goals. The other goal, second goal, was to enhance the town's tax base. As a longtime taxpayer in this town, I know that is something we've been striving for a long time, but to do so in a way that accommodates the various needs of the town, the diverse needs of the town, and the people that are here, and the residents that are here. But lastly, the other third objective was to enhance UNH's, to leverage UNH's capabilities from their technology, their thought process. They create knowledge is what they do. How can that be leveraged with private sector investment and private sector knowledge and the town's cooperation and a seat at the table at this partnership? So that's, again, the background I want. The current PUD, which has evolved out of that with the hard work that Michael in particular has put into it, I support it. There's some talk from people who have reviewed it saying it's too prescriptive. Closely, there's language in there that allows that prescription to define what might go in there, but it also allows for flexibility on the part of the planning board, site review, as you move forward through the actual development. And that's absolutely critical. That project is going to be at least 10 years in the making. It could be 10, 15, or 20 years. It's going to take 3 or 4 years. Even if they hire a master developer tomorrow, it's going to take that long to get this thing really up and running. The uncertainty in the market right now, the uncertainty in government programs, funding, we all have to live with that. That just throws, more uncertainty into this project. But if there is an underlying basis for making good decisions out there and for supporting whatever the market brings, whatever research activities happen, then it's going to accelerate that and make it more. In particular, I want to point out Section 11, Paragraph 2, and interpretation on that. That is where it's one paragraph or one sentence, but that's probably the most powerful language in that PUD ordinance because it says...
Hit me with that line again.
Section 11, Paragraph 2 at the very end.
Section 11 under which letter?
Under I, I'm sorry, not I. Interpretation application, that's on page 10. The PUD development plan need not include exact lot locations and layouts, exact locations and those kinds of things. That's key because, as I said, it's going to be a 10 or more year development plan. Things are going to change. Tenants, buyers, research activities are going to change, so it needs that flexibility put into it. One suggestion would be to, in a similar fashion, either in that paragraph or elsewhere, is to incorporate the word phasing into that. This is going to be done in phases. And while the first phase, which is the one that's going to get out of the ground first, needs to be prescriptive and meet this overall vision that the PUD development plan that comes forward, describes, other phases may change. And I don't think it'd be wise to lock the town into a process that 10 or 15 years from now, things have changed, and you have to go back and change the zoning ordinance and some of those prescriptive measures to be able to accommodate what something, that needs to be done there. So that's really all I had to say on this. And again, thank you for your hard work going into it. And I hope this thing moves forward rapidly. We're hoping very strongly that the university is going to be able to continue with their their position of getting a master developer in there and bringing the money needed and the expertise needed to get this thing off the ground, even in the market conditions we're in right now. So thank you very much.
Peyton has a question.
Payne?
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Given that it sounds like you have some expertise in this area, and that one possible issue that we might run into as this evolves is there could be maybe a lack of understanding by the community, and there could be pushback. And so I'm just wondering, given your experience, how have other communities possibly dealt with sort of educating and bringing everyone and including people in the process so that everyone feels included in the decision making?
It's difficult in any situation, as you know, particularly when you're down the road quite a ways and somebody new comes in and decides they don't like it and can object to a lot of things. I think it's very important to have a very clear vision in terms of what you want out there, what it can be, not necessarily what it will be, but what it can be, and use that and broad defining on that major vision. Then getting to the end road, getting to the end point down the road is going to be a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy. So.
Thanks.
Mr. Seymour, I got a couple questions. One is, in the allowed uses and disallowed stuff, does it feel too prescriptive to you, or does that seem like, when I read that, it feels very inclusive and says, hey, a ton of things can happen here, some scaries that we don't want are excluded? Or do you think that allowed uses concept is, I think it precludes a lot of questions later. Somebody might throw in these things that are not allowed, or might ask, man, but can I do this? By having this almost menu in there, it seems like it provides some guidance that's helpful.
I think it does. I agree with you on that. It says it not only says these are the things we will allow, this is the kind of things we allow, and this are the kinds of things we don't want. And I know Michael and I went back for a long time on the disallowed ones when it comes to the kind of the definition of heavy industry. What is that? And I mean, if a company comes along and now is changing from ocean mapping to ocean mining, or supporting that for some reason and doing it through NOAA grants or whatever it might have to have some pretty heavy industrial uses in one of their buildings in there. But I think there's flexibility in that can come back to in the process of approving individual site reviews and so on, that this board and even the town council, if they want to get involved, can say, yeah, that's still in line with the major vision we want to do. And even though some people might consider it heavy industry, it's not belching smoke, it's not doing those kinds of obnoxious things. It is achieving the goals that we want for this project out there. And the other point too is it is a mixed-use zone. Don't let anyone lose sight of that. It's going to provide housing, some retail, and the idea of graduate student housing came up earlier. I'm one of the authors of the UNH graduate student housing study that was done a couple of years ago. And yes, there's a demand, and that is a major focus right now and I'll probably say the first development that goes in there is probably going to be graduate student housing, because that's where the big need is today.
So by being prescriptive in some areas and kind of laying out what we want in a submission, have we tied an architect or planner's hands in some way that you think doesn't let them be creative? It seems like there's enough outs here that can be creative.
That's really was my point. There are a couple of outs in there, but as long as you keep that in mind, that the architects can have some leeway, the developers can have some leeway in terms of the process and the types of uses and the layout and those kinds of things. Unfortunately, it's a zoning ordinance, so it has to have a certain level of prescription to it, of specifics to it. It is a bit on the on that side, but as you have a way of building flexibility into the process, and I think it's going to work.
I think there was kind of a fork in the road that we came to in one of the first meetings where we discussed this. I think I looked at a lot of models, and I really don't think you have to have very much prescriptive stuff at all. I think that it's quite possible to write, and many do write, a PUD enabling ordinances that are really more procedural and legal in nature. So we discussed that, and the board, I was on the side of perhaps bifurcating at that time the documents so that the ordinance itself wouldn't represent any kind of snapshot in time of the thinking that would go into the review of proposals, but rather would define exactly the nature, completeness standards, and procedural natures for approval and so forth. The board wasn't comfortable with that because they thought that having, I thought maybe move the prescriptive stuff into some form of guidance document, which might then be modified over time and could represent a public document that people could look at if they were, that could evolve without any need for legal action. And that got shot down I think for reasons that were quite colorable, and I'm not, complaining about that. And we ended up with this, and I worked quite a bit with Michael on it as well, and I got comfortable with it, so I'm gratified that you got comfortable with it, but ultimately your audience for this is the master developer.
Yes.
And is it your opinion that master developer is going to find those outs and be comfortable that, when I ended my work with Michael on this, I was very comfortable that the items that we listed that were sort of designed to reflect the thinking of the board sort of for public consumption. We're not going to have this kind of use and that kind of use. I was comfortable that was an easy bar for a master developer to hurdle over, and that there would be very few PUs that would have any difficulty, leaping over these prescriptions. Is that your sense too?
Yes. Michael and I's thought process before you were engaged with the thing did the same thing. I started out saying, let's just make it, here's in very general global terms what we want to do out there, and anything goes. Bring us what you want to do, and we'll tell you whether we like it or not. Okay, that's
Right.
one way that some of these have been successful, and a way that most of them have been unsuccessful. Because what happens is when you get down the road, when things change, you guys change. The town councils change, the planners change, and those kinds of things. And suddenly, someone says, "Oh, we don't want that. That's not what we wanted." And I can give you many examples of that happening in major development projects around the country, and in New England in particular. So having that level of prescription up front, I think, is a good thing, as long as there's the flexibility for the master developer to sit down at the table with their partners. And this is why the public-private partnership is an important term here, because it is a partnership that has the University of New Hampshire, it has the town of Durham, it has the master developer, and a few other people there too, because there's government property out there. So you're going to have the federal government at the table in a certain extent. You're going to have funding sources at the table. But having the town there, I think, is important in order to make sure that message gets done, and it doesn't scare the developer away, first of all, but also allows the University of New Hampshire to achieve its goals in a way that's best leveraging what they bring to the table and what the master developer brings to the table, if that makes sense. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any hands in Zoom?
No.
Good evening. My name is Ken Weston. I am the Executive Director of Campus Stewardship and University Architect at the University of New Hampshire. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the hard work that this board has clearly put into this ordinance. The continued partnership with the university is obvious, and we do appreciate you demonstrating that by advancing this. As an institution, we don't have significant experience with PUDs, in part maybe because of our unique relationship with the town regarding zoning, but also I think because this development is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. So we aren't well grounded in how these ordinances will impact the development. We are very close to recommending a development partner to leadership. And that partner, as Craig alluded to, will have a lot of experience with how these ordinances are best framed, to remove risk from this process. With that in mind, I would ask this board to consider holding this ordinance open or in draft form until we can onboard that partner that has the experience to support us in reviewing this document. Thank you.
Any questions for Ken?
Just one question. What's the possible time frame that you think you're looking at, like weeks, months, 6 months, year?
Months, maybe month. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
And so part of the urgency that we had pushing this was so we had a document for UNH. And if UNH is saying, hey, give us a little time to work it out with the master developer, I think that's consistent. There's no push on the town side to get this done tomorrow.
We just wanted to make sure they weren't waiting on us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The subject of this amendment came up at the council agenda setting meeting this morning, and there was the perception on Todd Selig's part that the planning board was rushing this, but so it would be appropriate that we take time and consult with the partner who's consulted.
That rush came in back in January, February, when the RFP went out. It looked like per their schedule that about this time they would have selected a master developer already, according to their originals. Ken's nodding his head yes, which meant we would have had to be exactly where we are now if they stayed to their schedule.
We needed to be at least where we are.
And actually, at the last couple of meetings, we've had the question, we asked Mr. Barron, have you heard anything yet process for the master developer? How's that going through? Because we were trying to coordinate that, so.
Right.
Yeah, and our procurement process is closed. So I'm under an NDA. I can't discuss the proposals. And once we have a decision from leadership, that door opens and we can just start talking about this more openly. So if we can get past that benchmark before we finalize this, I think that would be advantageous to everyone.
All right. So one question I got to understand what the rest of the board thinks. We've got a document that's pretty darn good because we did it. And then we're saying, okay, we're open to sitting down with this new developer and saying, okay, give us your better ideas because we're always game to incorporate better, good ideas, and we'd be open to changing this if somebody has good ideas to convince us ways to make it better. Is that a fair summary of what we all think?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I totally
That would
agree.
also be a fair summary of Mr. Selig's opinion.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I think the compressed timeframe of the work is exactly as described. It was just to make sure that the document was in some kind of shape that when someone that you were working with looked at it, it did not have a chilling effect on your process.
Perfect.
All right,
So how do you envision us working with the master developer who will soon be selected?
well, yeah.
Like, how would that work? Just have a meeting or two with them and
It would
start
be a
hashing out?
meeting or two with either between the master developer and staff or with a subcommittee of the planning board.
That's described in the ordinance.
And that works for you at UNH?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, part of me wanted to see the winning, the proposal on the table before we finalize this anyway, but, so.
Right.
That's not going to happen until a decision's made.
And that's what that's what Administrator Selig wants as well.
Absolutely no reason not to listen.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
PUD?
Any hands in Zoom?
No.
I'll move we close the public hearing.
Second that.
All right, we'll table this one. I mean,
Move it along until we can continue to work on it with feedback from whoever's going to be actually doing it.
yes. Well, table it.
While we got Ken Weston here, hey, Ken?
Not letting him go yet.
Do you have any further information about the NOAA building and the status of that moving forward or not, or is that caught in budget limbo?
There have been no impacts to the budget of the NOAA project. We have a design submission right now from our design build team that we are working with our stakeholders to get in alignment. But as far as the grant funding, 2 separate federal grants are still secure. We've been told to be as planned until we hear otherwise. So it's moving. It is moving forward. It's delayed. We have had trouble getting to a concept that sort of aligns all of our sustainability and square footage and stakeholder interests, but that's pretty normal. That doesn't scare me. This is a fairly normal big stakeholder group, so it's just hard to get everyone together to make those decisions.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, item 12, 35 Madbury Road, reconfiguration of driveway. This is a conceptual review of a plan to one-way pattern and to adding spaces. DWS 35 LLC, care of Scott Drapeau, property owner, Paige Libby Jones there. This is in a professional office zone, map 106, lot 19. So as a conceptual review, we're just here to give thoughts. Get familiar with what the desires of the applicant are. I threw this on last minute at Michael's, when Michael asked, mainly because there is a bit of urgency on the applicant's side here because of the work currently going on to Madbury Road. If they would need to coordinate before that section of Madbury Road is finished to be the most effective in trying to get this done.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Paige Libby, again, for the record, with Jones and Beach Engineers. With me tonight also is Scott Drapeau, the property owner. So this is an existing fraternity house at 35 Madbury Road. The existing parking situation is quite tight, so you can see the existing parking lot there on the plan to the north of the building. So it's pretty tight. I think it's around 16 feet between some of the parking spaces that are there. There's really no good spot to turn around, so people parking there kind of just either back out and try to make a 5-point turn to get out, or they pull it way down to the end and kind of make a turn and come out that curb cut. It's a pretty wide curb cut as it exists today. It's about 30 feet wide. There are 26 students who live in the house today, and only 13 parking spaces. So they're looking to add some additional parking. Most of the, so they're right now they're parking elsewhere, renting spaces. So what we're proposing to do is, because there's really no room to add additional parking on the north side of the building, we're proposing to add a drive aisle that loops around the back and comes out the south side, so that basically it'll be a loop all the way around the building. The north entrance will become just a one-way in versus being two-way, and the new exit will be on the south end of the building. So we'll be adding 9 parking spaces adjacent to the building. We do lose one over here behind the building where the drive aisle will go. And then the other benefit to this is that the dumpster currently is kind of encroaching onto the abutter to the west. So this will allow us to actually move the dumpster so that it's one off of the abutter's property, but also more easily accessible when the dump truck comes to pick it up. They can just pull in, pull up straight to it, back up, and then turn around and the southern entrance. Also for fire truck access, this is much easier. Currently, if they were to ever pull in, to be honest, I don't know that they would ever even try to pull up right on Madbury Road. But now, if they did ever have to come in, they could get around the building. And that'd be something we would be looking at in more detail when we submit the full site plan application. One thing that we looked at in quite a lot of detail when we were putting this concept together is that this is probably one of the only properties in this immediate vicinity that actually has quite a few trees. So there's a pretty substantial wooded buffer along the southern property line between the two properties. And so our hope is to maintain the majority of that. There may be a couple trees up in the southern corner that may have to come down just because of the proximity of the turning radius there. But most of those trees will be able to be kept. And then the other thing we discussed when we met with Michael on site, as well as with is just green space overall on the property. So a different version of this that we had looked at was flipping the parking and the drive to switch that around after our meeting with them to kind of leave more green space and have a little bit of a front yard left after the parking is put in. I think that's it. Anything else to add?
Yeah, a lot of times the kids are having to back out on the road there. I just think making it one way will actually make it safer, because it is tight to get in and out of there.
Yeah, and the other thing, like the chair mentioned, this kind of came to light as they're doing the work out there currently. So we wanted to get in before you to just get some preliminary feedback before we submit a full site plan application, just because time is of the essence.
I was just wondering, how do your water and sewer hookups come into the place?
So they come in almost right where that driveway is, the proposed driveway.
The proposed driveway?
Yep, the water and sewer. So they come in and then they kind of make an angle. We'll get more of that information when we actually survey this. But we do, everything's marked out right now, so we're able to see where everything is currently. So that is where they are.
I really appreciate having the future Madbury Road delineated on a big map there.
Don't they have that dug up right now? Wasn't there a big hole there?
That's an active construction zone.
Yeah, it's
I stopped by the property yesterday as I happened to be passing by on a walk and got to see the existing condition for myself. I was curious at the time as to why you were wanting to add so many spaces, but you've answered that question to my satisfaction.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
By my count, you're going up to 21 spaces and you're going to have 27 residents.
Correct, yeah, so there's currently 26 students that live there, so we'll still be a little bit short. Not everyone can have a space. I don't know that everybody has a car, but you said most of them do, so.
It'd be a lottery. Weren't they here a few years back?
They were.
To kind of tweak that north side space, because it's a very, very tight space.
Yeah, back when they built spaces up front.
Yeah,
so
they added a
just
few
years
spaces,
ago.
they pushed it in. So, I mean, I've already walked the property for that, and I understand it's extremely, that one access in, one access out. I mean, it's a mess.
No, I mean,
I could see where you would need it.
I think that this new layout, it would be much safer overall for the entire community, because if you think about it, if you're going up Madbury and you're trying to turn into the apartment now, and people are trying to get out, you're kind of stuck trying to make that left turn lane, and all the traffic coming up from Garrison's piling up behind you towards the intersection.
Yeah,
so
it's happened to me going in there, and I
Yeah.
don't pull in there that often.
So this allows people to enter without having to worry about their entrance being blocked.
Well, I think emergency services too. I mean, even if emergency services drove in there, I don't know how a fire truck would fit. Paramedics would be challenged. And then backing out, it would be, it's an extremely tight spot. Anybody that has walked that unit, you know that. I think this is an excellent idea.
So I was going through our driveway regs, and for having a second driveway, the applicant must evidence the need for or value of a second access point satisfactory to the planning board based upon the following, and there are eight bullets listed. And I think 3 of them qualify very easily for this purpose, and that would be the high traffic volumes on the road, constraints to the site, and use of one-way driveway in order to, that supports the traffic flow.
Right, and with making the new driveway configuration one-way, do you intend to narrow the curb cut on the existing north side?
Yes, yeah, we'd be able to do that as well.
Yeah,
So kind of just clean up the whole thing.
The plan has the cut going down to 16 feet.
Yeah, thank you.
Almost in half.
What type of porous pavement? What type of porous pavement?
We haven't decided yet. We've gotten to the point of knowing, we did the impervious calculations, and adding all of this as impervious would be over the zoning requirements. But we haven't done enough investigation to know what we'll be doing for the porous pavement yet. But we will be when we do the full site plan application.
Just, you don't have to take, but from what I've seen, you typically would want to stick to the parking spaces. Okay, because that way the porous pavement, the maintenance on it is much less.
Yeah. Yeah, we can look at that and see if we'd be. Yeah. Yeah, we also control at this
The
point.
more you drive on it, the faster it breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
There's also that grid systems,
Yes, yep.
interlocking grid system.
Yes. we've seen
I guess
those.
they're evolving as we speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, once we have the full survey, we'll be able to kind of tighten up our impervious calculations, see what it really is and how much of it needs to be porous in order to stay under that threshold.
But this is your basic plan.
Any other comments, questions?
I have one comment on the drawing. I think I would just include on that trees along property line, I would include a cut area like 30 feet long from the road back into that, because when I was looking at the trees, you're too tight to the driveway, they're not gonna make it. So just be explicit and say, hey, I'm gonna whack 30 feet of trees, and if it doesn't happen, great, but at least nobody's circling back later and saying, you said you weren't gonna cut trees, because I think you're going to, for sure.
30 feet from the
I'm just saying roughly 30 feet from the sidewalk back, and that's just me putting my thumb on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and the quality of,
Not the whole side, yeah.
yeah, not the whole side.
We're trying to
just-
keep as much as we can.
Yeah, because that driveway's gonna be in the root ball immediately, and it's gonna kill the first 20 feet for sure.
Yeah, I think that's actually about where we were anticipating.
Yeah, so
This
just
is-
put it on
Right,
the drawing
right.
cut line and say,
Yeah.
we're gonna get these.
Yeah, if I'm reading this diagram correctly, there's a specific area that's marked trees between parking lots to remain, and that only goes from about there's a bump out on the north side of the house a bit back from the front, and the area in question only extends from there back to almost the rear, am I correct?
Roughly in that area, yep.
And so, I should be more explicit. When I say the cut line, show the cut line, and then show on your drawing more brand-new trees here. You're planting for the future, not for what it's gonna look like in, you're saying what's it gonna look like in 10 years.
Yep.
Because everything's gonna struggle and die there. So just be realistic about it.
Okay.
The trauma from the build will just completely kill them off. It's better just take them
Yeah,
out
as
and
soon
put
as
it
you get
new.
into the root ball,
Yeah.
the thing's done.
Yeah.
It just might take 10 years for it to die, and then it might die.
And it can become
onto your house,
and
you
it
don't
could be
want
a safety issue, and,
So
you
get it out
know,
of
a
here
storm,
now,
it falls
put a
on a
new
car.
tree, and it looks awesome in
Yep.
10 years.
Yeah, and I think they have some new trees going on the other side of the road, but I don't know if we can match that type of tree.
yeah.
It might look nice.
Yeah.
They're all Norway maples too, so that's another reason.
Yeah.
You can get rid of the Norway maples.
Yeah, get rid of those invasives.
Norway.
Actually,
That was the only change
Okay.
I had.
Yep. I'm fine.
all right. Anything, you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. I think we just wanted to come in and get some preliminary feedback.
I'm
and-
sorry you had to wait so long tonight.
Oh, no worries at all. I know you have a lot of things
I'm
on your
sorry you had to
agenda.
see me ugly, too. It doesn't normally happen.
But when it does, there's usually a reason.
All right.
Appreciate you
I-
guys coming in.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And while we're here, I'm done with you. I have a comment for the rest of the board. 1622, spacing of driveways. We have a minimum requirement for spacing on a collector road that is greater than what the allowed, what the required front lot, lot frontage is, which means we have an impossible requirement.
Yeah. I think we just need to waive all the spacing. We see
Yeah.
these and we say, these are reasonable. The spacing will only work if you.
It's like you need me to explain what I just said?
Yes.
All right. In many of our zones where these collector roads are, here, or when you get up a little bit into RA, which is just another block north of here, our lot frontage is only 100 feet. You need 100 foot of lot, but we're saying you have to have 125 feet between driveways. So there's
lots can't have driveways.
That's
Right.
basically what we're
Jump.
saying.
Jump over the
Simple as that.
trees. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
this sounds to me like it would be
There's
an
a contradiction.
appropriate waiver from
Yeah,
site plan
probably.
requirements.
Yeah. All right.
And then process-wise, what's required by us to waive that? Is that just a simple motion?
If it's a site plan requirement, yeah. And that's what that falls into, I believe. All right, we have, real quick, before we hit the minutes, I have one item for other business. Well, I have two items for other business. Well, that was, you're forcing me to, I was going to bring conservation subdivision draft to the workshop, but at this point, I don't think we have time to
We
look at it.
won't.
But you may get one in your email prior to the workshop, because Michael will be working on trying to get that to you. I also have here 4 copies, I'll be getting more later this week, of New Hampshire Coastal Flood Risk Summary, Part 2, Guidance for Using Scientific Projections. And so this is from Stratford Regional Commission. I'll send a couple that way and a couple
I
this
have-
way.
yeah, I have one
You have
already.
one, send those down
I
that way
would-
then.
I would be interested in one.
And
I have.
I'll get enough copies so everybody on the board can have one, and as well as a couple spares for the office upstairs. And it's, I think some of the guidance is a little over the top personally, but this can be helpful, especially, the idea here is it's a guide for boards like us with regards to now that we have the data about coastal flooding, what do we do about it? Thank you. So I'll get copies of that for everybody.
Would you make this one? You can take the next one.
It's all yours.
Okay.
And on page 5, that looks like the Durham Landing. High water. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be. All right, now we have 2 sets of minutes.
I had one other thing.
Yes.
So, the saga continues on Durham Point Road, and I just wanted the record to reflect that our zoning and site plan regs have some gaps in them that we should probably circle onto this year for single-family, really large developments that have high impact. There's no control on that where you could do a really big, extensive site work and not have the planning board look at it. And the reason why we have rules to look at site plans is because they're high impact. Well, if it's a residential, single family, or duplex, no requirement, and in some of the sensitive areas, that can be a big mess. In the past, we've always relied upon people voluntarily complying with what is best management practices, and those are not being followed at all at that site that we know is an issue.
Do you think they've hit the alteration?
I'm confident they've triggered several things.
Because that would be another thing to sick the state on them about.
Yeah. But part of the problem is that, you know, like now, we don't have a local control to go after these things, and now we're relying on DES to come out and say it's done, and I would advocate for some measure that lets us say we can review extensive projects that are single-family homes that have potential to cascade off the property.
So you want to create more bite in our regulations to come in and take care of
It would have to go into zoning. And we would have to figure out how to put it into zoning.
And
My one
so-
concern about it right now is that with the current, I mean, I'm not saying not do it, but it might just trigger another rule coming out of Concord saying, oh, you can't do that.
Well, I mean, you can't.
But there are definitely some issues there that need to be addressed.
I mean, I think the whole point of all to get good outcomes, and we have an outcome that is not what we would have liked or approved if we had known this was the case. So let's close the loopholes.
Yeah, because we didn't, I mean, I remember when we did the sidewalk and we approved all that we didn't see what's happened there.
There was no notion that
There was no
anything could
notion
occur
of
like that. And I'm not trying to impose costs on single-family dwellings. I'm trying to ensure that very large site work projects have appropriate scrutiny.
There's no reason why, our regulations exist, but there's no reason why, they're not onerous, and there's no reason why anybody can't follow them.
Yeah.
But when something like this happens, what do we have left with? What is our recourse?
And the answer that I've gotten when I pushed this and really investigated it is that there was less recourse than we thought. It's the dirt equivalent of the nuisance house ordinance.
The dirt equivalent.
All right, so minutes of April 9th. Let's see. 1, 2, all right. So 5 of us were here that night. We can do this.
Yep.
Right.
I have no changes to these. I thought they looked good.
Yeah, I was the same with both sets, so
I was fine with all of them.
I'll move that we accept the minutes of April 9th.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstaining because not present. I was not present.
2 abstentions due to lack of presence. And minutes of April 16th?
I had one comment on that, which was that on the vote to adjourn, there should have been 4-0. I did not vote when Councilor Grant is present.
Oh,
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, there were 5 people present, but that included both Councilor Grant and me.
Right. So, yes. We were running on 4 that night.
On page 3, there's a comment that was attributed to me, and
Did you provide that to Karen yet?
Yeah, I provided that to Karen when she sent the minutes out.
okay.
Very good. All right, I don't need to follow up on it then. Thank you. Anything else?
just on page 321, you know, I think the essence of what I was saying there was not captured, but I was saying the original development, Madbury Road, had a bunch of holes back in the day that were ready to be built on, and that's not the case now. That was when the Greens were there and other properties that got redeveloped. So we don't have to wordsmith that, but I don't think that's the case now. I don't think Madbury Road has a ton of holes to be built on.
Well, right now it does.
Yeah.
It's torn up.
Wrong type of holes.
We don't have to fix it, but
Work in
I just wanted
progress
you
on
guys
it.
to understand what I was trying to say there.
Yeah.
All right. All right, then I'll move that we accept the minutes of April 16th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Abstain from Peyton and Gary
And myself
and
as well.
Manoush. Very good. Item 15, adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.